This podcast of the Equine Forum is brought to you by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business. It all begins in 15 seconds right after this word from our podcast sponsor.
The University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business is now offering a graduate certificate, which can be completed in 15 or 30 weeks and be done as a standalone or used as 20% of your MBA. Classes at both the undergraduate and graduate level are forming now for August.
From the rail to your radio, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Mike Smith just shakes the reins at Songbird. Going for broke has made progress up into second inside a family tree, but they're 6 lengths behind Songbird at the 16th pole. It is Songbird, this magnificent filly, winning the Alabama. She is a perfect 10.
It is Wando by 6 into the lane. Mobile to the inside. Rock again on the outside. Final furlong. It is all Wando. Sharp, strong, and a dominating winner of the Queen's Plate. Wando. Simply spectacular.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires.
1 furlong to go. Art Collector tears off the turn, moves away by 4. Wadi back in second, officiating in Mind Control, 16th to go. And it's another masterpiece for Art Collector. He goes back-to-back in the Charlestown Classic.
In the center, it's Tricky, stretching her every yard of the way. Royal Delta's getting involved late as well. Plum pretty along the inside. It's Tricky racing between them and Royal Delta. It's a thriller. Royal Delta's going to score. Royal Delta strikes the front, and Royal Delta, perfectly handled, has taken the Ladies' Classic. She's won a division for the year, too.
Now, here's Mike Penna.
Good morning once again, everyone. It is post time for the show that launched a network, the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires, right here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch. Happy to have you along for the ride again this morning, right up until 11 a.m. Eastern on Sirius 216, XM 204, affiliates in Lexington, Louisville, and across the country, and streaming worldwide and podcast on our website, horseracingradio.net, or wherever you get your podcasts. Well, those of you who have been following our shows and our social media pages this week, and I hope that's all of you, are well aware that we have been celebrating the career of the brilliant Hall of Fame mare Royal Delta with Royal Delta Week, all presented by our friends at Keeneland Sales, which is a perfect tie-in considering that Royal Delta sold at the 2011 Keeneland November sale for a whopping $8.5 million. And that was right after she won that year's Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic, also known as the Distaff. She would return to successfully defend her title the following year, and at that time, she was just the second horse to win the Ladies Classic, or Distaff, twice, joining Bayakoa, who pulled off the double in 1989 and 1990. It was only those two. But since 2012, we've seen Beholder win the Distaff in 2013 and again in 2016, and Monomoy Girl win in 2018 and in 2020. When Royal Delta won her first Ladies Classic, it was at the end of her 3-year-old campaign. 11 3-year-olds have won that classic, that Distaff. So it stands to reason that today's Alabama at Saratoga, which is presented, by the way, by Keeneland Sales, has a pretty good chance of playing a major role in determining the outcome of this year's Distaff at Santa Anita the first weekend in November. So I thought today's poll question should focus on the ladies. So I want to know, who are some of your all-time favorite fillies and mares? And I don't mean necessarily the best fillies and mares of all time. I mean your personal favorites. Who are some of your all-time favorite fillies and mares? I'm going to ask Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin that question when I wrap up the show with I Ask, They Answer. That comes up in the final segment at 10:30 Eastern. You can let me know your favorite filly and or mare on our Twitter page at HRRN, and you can do it on our Facebook page at Horse Racing Radio Network, or if you're not a social media person, email the show, Mike at horseracingradio.net. You can always get in touch with the show that way. Email me and let me know some of your favorite fillies and mares of all time. For me, it's pretty easy. My all-time favorite filly never ran in the distaff. As a matter of fact, she won just 8 of her 20 career starts, but many of those were big, big wins early in her career. And I'm talking about Excellent Meeting. Some of you might be saying, who? Why not Royal Delta? Why not Beholder? Why not Monomoy Girl? Why not Lady Secret? Well, Excellent Meeting. Again, this doesn't have to be the best fillies and mares of all time, but I want to know your favorites. And for me, Excellent Meeting, who was campaigned by John Mabie's Golden Eagle Farm, is the one that just drew me in. And 4 of her 8 wins were grade 1s, which came in her 2-year-old and 3-year-old seasons. And I truly believed Excellent Meeting was going to win the 1999 Kentucky Derby. She certainly didn't disappoint that day. She finished 5th. That race was won by Charismatic, if you recall, in 1999. And if you watch the race, she was way back early in 18th position. And she put in a tremendous stretch run to finish about 2 1/4 lengths behind Charismatic at the wire. And what most people have probably forgotten about that Derby, or maybe never even realized, is that Excellent Meeting, the filly, went off as the favorite against the boys that day. She was really, really good. Maybe not the greatest of all time, certainly not the greatest of all time. But for me, my personal favorite filly of all time, Excellent Meeting. And I never did like the decision to run her in the Preakness 2 weeks later. She was never the same after being pulled up in that race. Never the same. Wouldn't have shocked me if she had gone on to win the Belmont Stakes, but rushing her back in the Preakness, I hated that move at the time. I hate it even today looking back on it. But Excellent Meeting came along for me at a time when I was working as an advertising rep at the Thoroughbred Times. And that was about 4 years before I would meet my mentor, Pete Coulis, out at Keeneland and begin my career in radio. But my territory at the time, when I was selling ads for Thoroughbred Times, was the West Coast. And one of the people that I was tasked with trying to get into the magazines in the stallion directory was John Mabie and Golden Eagle Farm, and they had a bunch of really good stallions at that time. They were a major player. And I remember getting a chance to meet with Mr. Mabie at the Keeneland sales, and we had lunch together at the buffet. And for whatever reason, we clicked. And I just found myself being drawn toward his horses and his philosophies. I got a chance to tour Golden Eagle Farm when I went out to California. And it was so cool just to be part of that, if you want to look at it that way, that Golden Eagle family. So Excellent Meeting was just one of those horses early on, before I even started on radio, that just drew me in. So let me know your thoughts. Who are your all-time favorite fillies and or mares? At HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, or hit me up with an email, mike@horseracingradio.net, and let me know. And tell me the story why. Go ahead and tell me the story, and I'll try to work that in later in the program. We saw a pretty good filly in Moira beat the boys in last year's Queen's Plate. That's Canada's version of the Kentucky Derby. She was so impressive, she would go on to be voted Canada's Horse of the Year for 2022. Jim Lawson, Woodbine CEO, is going to be with me at 8:15 Eastern Time, right after this first commercial break. He's going to talk about what is now the King's Plate, in keeping with tradition of being named after the ruling British monarch. So I'll get a chance to talk to Jim Lawson in a few minutes. Art collector. Yeah. A name that resonated for so many of us over the past couple of years, and certainly this past week when the news came out that he would be put down because of laminitis. Just brutal, gut-wrenching news. He was expected to take his shot at becoming the first horse to win the Charlestown Classic 3 times when that race is renewed this coming Friday evening. But then that devastating news this past week, and I'm going to talk with Charlestown announcer Paul Espinosa at 8:35. Later in this first hour, Paul will be here to share his thoughts on Art Collector, look back on those last 2 performances that he put in when he won the past 2 seasons, and then he's going to talk about who we can expect to see in that race and some of the other races coming up on Friday at Charlestown. Keeneland Director of Auctioneers Ryan Mahan will be with me at 9 o'clock. He's going to remember the great Royal Delta. I told you in my opening comments that she sold for $8.5 million at the Keeneland November sale. He remembers her very, very well. So we'll talk to Ryan at 9 o'clock. 9:20, Unsung Heroes. Godolphin's Jerry Duffy will be with me, and I'm really looking forward to that visit, especially with Wet Paint going as one of the favorites in today's Alabama. Wet Paint, owned by Godolphin. They also own Pretty Mischievous, some really good 3-year-old fillies right now. Not sure which one you would consider to be the leader in that division. I think a lot of people will look at Wet Paint as being the leader. If she wins today in the Alabama, that means she would have won the Coaching Club American Oaks and then the Alabama. But Pretty Mischievous is the Kentucky Oaks winner, and that holds a lot of weight. And she's won a lot of big races. She's really good, so it's hard to differentiate the two, but I think people will look toward what happened to her in the test stakes, being beaten by Maple Leaf Mel. I know it doesn't show that in the past performances. It's going to show that Pretty Mischievous got the victory because of what happened with Maple Leaf Mel right before the wire. But that was a sprint race. And I still think if you're going to look at those classic distances, now maybe Pretty Mischievous doesn't want to go 1.25 miles. And maybe that's the reason she's not in that race today. But Godolphin's Jerry Duffy will join me on Unsung Heroes at 9:20. And Jerry's going to talk about some of the things that go into making these horses great long before they get to the racetrack. Should be a really fun conversation. And at 9:45-ish or so, right in that ballpark, and I say that without some conviction, Mike Smith, the Hall of Famer, is going to go down the road to the Breeders' Cup with us. Mike, of course, rode Royal Delta, won the Breeders' Cup Distaff with her, Ladies Classic, the second time that she won it. I'll get a chance to welcome Mike to the program. He's working horses at Santa Anita this morning, said he should be done by 9:40, 9:45. And then he's going to come right on the air with us, and we're going to talk to Mike for 8 or 9 minutes or as long as we can before we have to wrap up the second hour of the program. So that's at 9:40. Looking forward to that conversation with the Hall of Famer. Joe Kristufek with the twinSpires Triple Play at 10 o'clock. Kurt Becker, Stroll Through Racing History at 10:20. Dale, Tim, I Ask, They Answer at 10:30 Eastern Time. Another loaded show on this Saturday morning. Stay with me. Jim Lawson talks King's Plate next. This is the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires on HRRN, Horse Racing's voice.
Race the twinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, twinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. twinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit twinspires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Get ready for the biggest night of racing in Charlestown history on Friday, August 25th. It's the Grade 2 $1 million Charlestown Classic and the Grade 3 $750,000 Charlestown Oaks, now the richest sprint race for 3-year-old fillies in North America. The spectacular card features 9 stakes races worth $2.9 million. The action gets started with a special first post time of 5 o'clock Eastern. It's the Grade 2 Charlestown Classic and Grade 3 Charlestown Oaks on Friday, August 25th here at Hollywood Casino and Charlestown Races.
I'm visiting with Joe Brown Nicholson of Nicholson Insurance Agency. Joe, how are things in the insurance world?
Things are just fine in the insurance business, Mike. I'm grateful for the people who place their trust in Nicholson Insurance Agency to protect their homes, autos, farms, and horses against financial loss. As you know, we represent many insurance companies, so we can choose just the right company for each client at the right price. We welcome each opportunity to provide quality service to our clients.
So having many companies seems important.
Absolutely. Just like in thoroughbred racing and breeding, competition also works for the betterment of the insurance industry. I am constantly impressed with the ways companies respond to consumer demands with new insurance products and services.
Thanks, Joe. For your equine and general insurance needs, call Nicholson Insurance Agency at 859-224-7080 or visit us on Facebook. You gotta know Joe.
There are plenty of thrills at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet with live racing Friday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy the Summit of Speed, the Florida Sire Stakes Series, and a whole lot more. Watch the action from our Trackside Carousel Club, our Feast in 10 Palms restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, reservations, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Keeneland is proud to sponsor this afternoon's Grade 1 Alabama and celebrate the tremendous talent associated with the historic race, including Hall of Famer Royal Delta, who won the race in 2011. The last 4 winners of the Alabama are all Keeneland September graduates: Nest, Malathot, Swiss Skydiver, and Dunbar Road. The World's Yearling Sale takes place September 11th to the 23rd at Keeneland. With more than 4,200 yearlings cataloged, there's something for everyone. Keeneland graduates demonstrate that good horses come from book 1 to book 6 and at every price point. Make plans to attend the Keeneland September sale.
Keeneland Sales proudly presents Royal Delta Week on HRRN. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by twinSpires.
Mighty Heart kicking right back. Mighty Heart still in front. Clayton in second, running on his dotted line in behind the top 4 as they corner, but it's Mighty Heart in front, the one to catch in the Queen's Plate, chased by Clayton. Then to Cumsy's War, and behind them Curlin's Voyage, but Mighty Heart is long gone. Mighty Heart has got the Queen's Plate completely wrapped up, and this is a dominant performance. Daisuke Fukumoto, Mighty Heart, full of heart by 8 lengths. Belichick second, Clayton third, Tecumseh's War fourth, and Curlin's Voyage was fifth. 2:198.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, with you on this Saturday morning. That was Robert Geller with the call of the 2020 renewal of the Queen's Plate, a significant running of the Queen's Plate, not just because it was won by the tremendous horse Mighty Heart, but because of the fact that that was a pandemic year. And the man who helped guide Woodbine through all of those buoys that you had to go through during the pandemic was Jim Lawson. Jim is going to be stepping down as the CEO of Woodbine this fall, so this will be his final edition of what is now the King's Plate, and Jim is with me now. And Jim, I have to tell you, we've been doing this interview together on Queen's Plate morning for several years. This is the first time that I've ever had a chance to say, good morning, happy King's Plate Day, my friend.
Yeah, and it's exciting, Mike. Great to be on. It's been since 1951, the last King's Plate, so this is a whole new era and an exciting one. As it turns out, it's turning out to be just a lot of buzz around the race this year. It's great.
I can imagine this is going to be a bit of an emotional day for you.
Well, yes, it's certainly a change for me. I'm stepping into the executive chair role, so I'm not going too far. But yes, it's certainly a case of me handing over the reins to a new CEO, Michael Copeland, and time for fresh ideas and keep this industry going in Ontario in a really positive way. And we're certainly on a good path.
That 2020 renewal of the plate, I mentioned the fact that it was in the pandemic year, and I remember you and I visiting, talking about all the challenges that not only Woodbine, but racing in general was facing at that time. And we were very fortunate. Racing was one of the few sports, maybe the only sport, that was able to continue during the pandemic because we were being run outside. There was a lot of social distancing. Everybody was able to continue with it safely. But, Jim, you and the team did wonderful work to keep the ship on track throughout that entire pandemic.
Yes, thank you, Mike. We had tight restrictions in Ontario, and crowds were not allowed, and racing was suspended for a period of time. And the entire community, not just the Woodbine team, but led by the Woodbine team, setting some strict protocols and procedures, and wrote the book on it, including wrote the book relating to broadcasts and live broadcasts of sports, and really worked closely with CTV and TSN to broadcast that Queen's Plate in 2020. So the community rallied around, and we went to the government and the health authorities and showed them exactly what our protocols and procedures were doing. And in addition, a great safety record. There was zero COVID during that period on the Woodbine backstretch, which was remarkable. So they allowed us to proceed, and we kept it going, and it was very unique. There were no fans there that day, but we got through it, and the entire industry, as you mentioned, with wagering and pulling together, did a great job during the pandemic.
One of the things that always stood out to me in the times that we had the chance to be there and broadcast the Queen's Plate, Jim, was the pageantry that surrounds the event and everything that takes place leading up to the race. I'm assuming that will continue with this being the King's Plate now?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe more to the point, Mike, that's a large part of the reason that we renamed the race from the Queen's Plate to the King's Plate. That relationship with the royal family and bringing in the royal landau with a horse-drawn carriage and corresponding with Buckingham Palaces is part of the tradition. And we wanted that living, breathing relationship with the monarchy relating to the race. And so we felt that in order to keep that going and keep those traditions going in the same way, the right thing to do was to rename the race and continue that relationship with the monarchy in relation to the race. And so, yes, it will be exactly the same today, although it will be the King's Plate. And so it's going to carry on in a very fun way, in a traditional way that people seem to love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be incredible. What's the matter? You couldn't get any horses to run in the race?
Boy, oh boy. It's really interesting, including, also eligible horses. It's a field of 17, and it's only restricted to 17 because people asked me that this week. And when we brought in that wonderful EP tail turf course to the outside, it narrowed the main course. And so our regulators have said, and in agreement with the Jockeys Guild, that a maximum of 17. We have a starting gate, auxiliary starting gate that could take us to 20, but so we're restricted to 17. But happy, that's enough. That's a very big field as it is, and it's going to be a great race.
Yep, it's going to be a fantastic race. The King's Plate takes place tomorrow. That is the King's Plate program at Woodbine. 5:39 Eastern is the post time for the big one, but there are several stakes races on that program. We're going to see some star quality. I want to dive into the King's Plate field a little bit with you here, Jim, but tell me about some of the other things happening at Woodbine, some of the other stakes races that folks can look forward to tomorrow, and some of there's great wagering opportunities too.
Yeah, there sure are. It's a big day. There are 5 stakes races in total, including the King's Plate. I think the one that obviously comes to mind is the Dance Smartly. And it's a Grade 2 race on the turf. It's I won't say it's a prep, but in effect, the horses, the Star Field, will be using it as a prep, likely for our EP Taylor down the road. It's a star-studded field with featuring Moira, who was the Canadian Horse of the Year, but she'll have her hands full with some of the invaders. So then we've got a couple of nice 2-year-old stakes, the Soaring Free and the Catch a Glimpse, which definitely are preps for the Grade 1 Talma and Summer Stakes coming up on mile weekend. And then we have the Bold Venture. And then just a host of guaranteed pick 5s and pick 4s all day long. And then a jackpot high 5 as the last race with a guaranteed, or not a guarantee, but a carryover of $340,000, which will bring that mandatory payout on that jackpot to well over $1 million, I suspect. So it's lots of lots of big pools for the wagering customers, and lots of great racing all day with big fields and 13 races in total, Mike.
Visiting with Jim Lawson, the CEO of Woodbine. He'll be stepping down at the end of this year in the fall, and this will be his final King's Plate, at least in terms of the CEO role. But you heard him say he'll be moving over. He won't be going far. He'll still be around Woodbine and still around the industry that he loves so much. Jim, you mentioned Moira, and we talked about her being the winner last year and how brilliant she was. She goes on to being named Horse of the Year at the end of 2022. Mark Casse brings in the Woodbine Oaks winner, Elysian Field. She's 8-1 on the morning line in tomorrow's King's Plate. 3-year-old filly. Fillies have had a lot of success in the Queen's Plate, King's Plate over the years. How come?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's in large part first of all, I mean, the numbers would tell you, I guess, Mike, that the smaller numbers of Canadian breds, and it maybe puts the fillies on a more opportunistic footing, the same way any horse, that there's a smaller group. It's a small quality group, but gets you into the field in terms of the prep, and I think the real answer to the question is that the way we structure it, the Canadian Oaks, which is a perfect prep race leading up to the King's Plate, along with the Plate Trial, and year after year now it's squared up as the Oaks winner versus the Plate Trial winner, and there's just been a lot of good Canadian bred fillies over the years too. Why that is, I can't give you the answer to that, but it's certainly nice, and it really has set up, and it's great for the wagering too. It ends up being a bit of a boys versus girls match, and she'll be one of the top 4 or 5 choices. And I'd expect the favorite in the race is going to be 4-1 or 9-2 kind of thing, and there'll be half a dozen horses in that range of 4-1 to 8-1. So it's going to be a wide open field with a big and likely record win pool wagering on this race.
Do you have a pick?
Oh, you know me, Mike. I'd like to tell you the Hamilton Tiger Cats, but they're not having a good year. So no, it's too tough. I will say, you mentioned Mark Casse. I think with that big a field, that Patrick Husbands is always dangerous on the front end, where you're going to find Paramount Prince. So they're going to have to be careful not to let Patrick lope along, and he's just a master at judging pace and doing that at the Woodbine Oval. But we'll see. It really is wide open. I mean, Chad's horse, I don't know Calic to likely be the favorite, but as I said, there's going to be half a dozen that figure, and anyone can win, of course, in this kind of field. And a lot of unknowns here, going 1.25 miles for the first time.
Jim, I wasn't even going to bring up the Hamilton Tiger Cats this time around.
Well, it's tradition, and you probably were going to be nice to me for not bringing them up. We lost to Edmonton, who were 0-9 the other, and we lost Thursday night. So you were being kind, I know, but it's tradition for us to talk a little CFL smack, and there you go. So it's been a tough year for my Tabbies.
Yeah, well, they'll rebound. There's too much history and tradition with that franchise. They will rebound for sure. Before I let you go, you had sent me a wonderful message last night. We have been celebrating Royal Delta Week here on the network, and Royal Delta sold for $8.5 million at the Keeneland November sale back in 2011. Ryan Mahan is the director of Auctioneers at Keeneland. He's going to join me at 9 o'clock Eastern. And you told me you have a long-standing, very close friendship with him. I'm really looking forward to talking with Ryan. He's one of the classiest guys in the business.
Yeah, well, good. I mean, make sure you say hi. I'll be listening. Ryan and we go back over 40 years. We've been close friends. He was supposed to be here and spend and his wife Kitty were supposed to spend King's Plate weekend with my wife Sue and I, and there's a family illness, so late scratch for Ryan. But I know he wishes he was up here, and we've been great buddies for forever, and our families were close friends, and he's a great guy and great for the industry, and he's got lots of interesting and fun stories. So what a great guest to have on.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you meet a guy like Ryan Mahan and you start getting into meeting some of the people in the Keeneland sales crew, that means you also have to meet Kurt Becker, the announcer at Keeneland. And I don't wish that on anybody, my friend.
Love Becker. He too is full of stories. And, Mike, I was driving, a year ago, and I got a conference call from Becker and from Ryan, and they said, I answered, and Ryan said, Jim, I got Becker here with me. He wants to know whether you're going to change the name of the race to the King's Plate. And I laughed, and I said, geez, that's, this was before Her Majesty's passing. He said, but if she passes, and that's inevitable, are you going to change the name? And I said, Becker, you're the first one to ask. But he's got a great mind, I guess, is maybe the point of the story. But what a character, and say hi to him too.
Yeah, Kurt's been part of our HRRN team for many, many, many years. It's a wonderful relationship that goes back a long ways. And people see Kurt Becker, and they hear Kurt Becker at Keeneland calling the races. They hear him on the auction stand when he's reading the pedigrees. And he's so brilliant. And that brilliance doesn't come by accident. Kurt Becker is among the hardest working people I've ever seen in any profession. He is so well prepared, and he spends so much time before he calls races, before he goes on the auction stand, before he goes on air with us. His research is impeccable, and that's what makes a guy like Kurt Becker so good. Yeah, absolutely. He works hard, and he is brilliant. Don't tell him I said that, but yeah, absolutely, he is. We've already talked about him too much on the show. Yeah, he's top notch, and you're lucky to have him on as a regular, and great. This is a great show, Mike, and thanks so much for having me on. It's an exciting weekend up here in Toronto, and nice to talk to you again. And we'll talk in the future. Yep, every King's Plate morning, Jim Lawson will be with me. I can promise you that going forward. Jim, appreciate it, my friend. Enjoy the day tomorrow, and enjoy a wonderful weekend at Woodbine. Great, thank you. All the best. All right, Jim Lawson, the CEO of Woodbine, at least until this fall when he transitions into a new role. He'll spend more time with his family, and a well-deserved career wrapping up for Jim Lawson. Time now for your Legends of the Turf. When I come back, going to shift our focus to the Charlestown Classic coming up on Friday evening in West Virginia. Paul Espinosa, the announcer at Charlestown, going to be with me. He'll talk about the great art collector who ends up succumbing to laminitis this past week. He was expected to run on Friday night. That will not happen, but he'll look back on his career, his previous 2 wins in the Charlestown Classic, and he'll look ahead to the horses that will be competing on Friday. That's all next, right after your Legends of the Turf.
To be labeled a Titan of the Turf is neither to be taken lightly nor a term to be recklessly bandied about. By anybody's measure or means, the subject of this piece has to be unqualified to classify it as indeed a true Titan of the Turf. His lifetime spanned the administrations of American Presidents Ulysses S. Grant through Lyndon Baines Johnson. And when he passed away in 1966 as a nonagenarian at the age of 92, a bright, sparkling light in the world of thoroughbred racing suddenly went dark. He was born in a small cottage in Brooklyn, New York on July 23, 1874, on land which later became part of the old Sheep's Head Bay racetrack. At the age of 11, on the very day Grover Cleveland was inaugurated as president, he joined the racetrack colony as an errand boy for the Dwyer Brothers stable while sleeping in the loft. He became a jockey at the age of 16 and rode until 1901 when he switched to training. His last mount was a horse called Agnes D., who finished dead last in a field of 5 in the title stakes at Sheepshead Bay. The scales of justice were to be balanced, as it were, since Agnes D. was the very first winner he saddled as a trainer a few races later, and with that win came the inception of an absolutely phenomenal career. Between 1907, when tabulated records began, and the end of his 5-star career, he saddled 2,275 winners, including virtually every major stakes race east of the Mississippi. His inaugural stakes winner was Stargaze in the Merchants and Citizens Handicap in the Saratoga Cup. This guy only had a 6th grade formal education and he wrote very poorly, but he trained thoroughbreds with unmatched success for the likes of Colonel E.V.D. Morrell, James F. Quincy Johnson, Ambassador Breckinridge Long, Senator Johnson Camden, William Woodward Sr. and Jr., Ogden Mills Phipps, Ogden Phipps, Edith Woodward Bancroft, Mrs. Whitney Sloan, dancer Vernon Castle, and a warden at the Sing Sing prison, among many, many others. His horses, including Bold Ruler, Nashua, and Gallon Fox, won 470 stakes races. He often said his best distance horse had been Diablo, and Johnstown his best sprinter. To this day, he's the only trainer with 2 Triple Crown winners to his credit, Gallon Fox and Omaha. Among other standouts he trained were Apache, Bossuet, Fighting Fox, Vagrancy, Bouchanda, High Voltage, Misty Morn, Mary Lassie, and Happy Gal. The subject of this profile had another quite remarkable talent as well. He developed his own veterinary supplies for ailing horses, and he personally used them as well as prescribing them for others. Eddie Arcaro at one time had severe bursitis problems and very nearly quit riding as a result. But the man herein being profiled put Arcaro on a leg paint he had developed for horses. Now, Eddie may have had a horsey smell about him going postward, but it helped him put on many of those inimitable pumping, driving finishes going to the wire. Yes, indeed, he did have a way with riders. In the early 1900s, he took a young Hebrew rider under his tutelage whose name was Walter Miller. Miller had not ridden a single winner in 1907, his apprentice year, but in 1908 he won 388 races while under the tutorial guidance of our man. That 388 win record stood for 40 years. Headley Woodhouse was the last to ride in the colors of our subject, red and orange. Woodhouse once apologized for giving one of his horses less than satisfactory a ride in a major stakes race, and our man replied, quote, "You couldn't have ridden him any worse than I would have." The man who went his way to meet the Grim Reaper in that great paddock in the sky at the nonagenarian age of 92 in 1966 won the Kentucky Derby 3 times, the Preakness 4 times, the Belmont 6 times, the Jockey Club Gold Cup 7 times, the Lawrence Realization, Wood Memorial, and Alabama Stakes 8 times, the Dwyer 9 times, and the Saratoga Cup a remarkable 10 times. He was the man who once said, quote, "When you're away from New York, you're camping out." The saga of this venerable monument to thoroughbred racing, worthy of a Homerian epic, and the stuff of which legends are crafted, was a legend in his own time. He was Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons, the man from Brooklyn.
This is HRRN, horse racing's voice.
Race the twinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, twinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. twinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit twinspires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Tenda Equine and Pet Care products have been keeping world-class equine athletes happy and healthy for generations. Keep your equine athlete looking and performing well with Tenda Next Generation Wound and Skin Care Treatment, along with nutritional supplements, leg and muscle care products, salves, hoof care, poultice, topical aids, and grooming products. Visit tendahorse.com today.
Ellis Park is offering average daily purses of nearly $600,000 and a record $14 million in purses. Kentucky breds will compete for $70,000 in maiden special weight races and up to $80,000 in allowance races. And bettors will love the low 15% takeout pick 5s and the 20-cent jackpot pick 6, along with a daily $3 all-turf pick 3. For more information, visit EllisParkRacing.com. Ellis Park Pursers are powered by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. First post, 12:45 p.m. Eastern.
The thrill of world-class racing is just beginning at Toronto's Woodbine Racetrack. Kick off the weekend's action now with racing each Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, beginning at 1:05 p.m. Eastern, with Thursday twilight racing being added on May 25th. With more than $64 million in purses this season, you'll enjoy world-class racing and training facilities with the top turf racing in North America over the prestigious EP Taylor Turf Course. You won't want to miss racing at Woodbine. For wagering updates, handicapping tips, racing news, and more, visit woodbine.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by twinSpires.
Art Collector and Sleepy Eyes Todd tries to battle on bravely. Art Collector edging clear, but Sleepy Eyes Todd is back for more. Art Collector and Sleepy Eyes Todd. Art Collector begins to edge away, and it's Art Collector in the Charlestown Classic by a length and a half. Art Collector starts to move away from Wadib. Officiating is moving in with Mind Control, who swings wide. 1 furlong to go. Art Collector tears off the turn, moves away by 4. Wadib back in second. Officiating in Mind Control, 16th to go. And it's another masterpiece for Art Collector. He goes back to back in the Charlestown Classic.
Paul Espinosa with the call of the last 2 runnings of the Charlestown Classic, both won by Art Collector, as you just heard. He was expected to try to become the first horse to win the Charlestown Classic 3 times when the race is held on Friday evening, but as we heard earlier this week, Art Collector succumbing to laminitis. It's a gut punch to everyone in the industry, and certainly to the folks at Charlestown and to Paul Espinosa. Tough call going into this year's Charlestown Classic, but a really solid field shaping up outside of Art Collector for this year's Charlestown Classic. And Paul is with me now here on the Equine Forum. Paul, good morning.
Morning, Mike. Yeah, definitely not the way we were hoping to roll into the Classic. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers go out to Bruce, Bill Mott, the entire team. It's just it's an industry that obviously is well documented, the highest highs and the lowest lows, and definitely this is among the lowest of lows that we could have imagined.
Yeah, I know you were excited to try to call some history on Friday. We won't have that opportunity. There's always history made in the Charlestown Classic, but you look at the horses that have won the race twice, Art Collector, Researcher, and Imperative, and Art Collector was going to be favored Friday. There's no doubt about it. He was going to be the favorite in that race. We know he loves Charlestown. It would have been fun to see if he could have pulled it off.
It really would have. And, this year, obviously, it was, just so cool to see him, kind of really stamp himself as and let everybody know what kind of horse he was with that win in the Pegasus down at Gulfstream. And, he was a 4-legged billboard for us. He definitely, after winning that first edition for him, going on to win the Grade 1 Woodward, and he just was as classy as they could come, and yeah, it's just an unspeakable, sad story there that was very much looking forward to seeing him back here, and I know that a lot of folks here were as well. It's one of those things where obviously every year it's folks do look forward to seeing the big names, both the 4-legged and 2-legged varieties that come for Charlestown Classic and Oaks Night. And, our biggest superstar, unfortunately, won't be with us.
Well, the Grade 2 Charlestown Classic is one of 9 stakes races set to be contested on that Friday program. It's a tremendous evening of racing, even outside of the Charlestown Classic. But let's talk about the Classic. Without Art Collector, where does that leave us now? Who are some of the major players we're going to be looking at for the Classic this year?
So, kind of start off with stating the obvious that I think it's kind of well documented that, the Classic division, not exactly at its strongest that it's been in the last couple of years. I guess that was, we kind of knew that was going to happen when I believe it was 6 of the 8 horses that ran in last year's Breeders' Cup Classic were retired after that race. So, we kind of knew going in that there was some room for some people to step up. And then, when you take out a horse like Art Collector so close to the race, the I guess analogy that I've kind of been thinking of, I'll adjust it for you Steelers fans. It's like finding out the week before the Super Bowl that Big Ben is going to be unavailable. It's like you're just not going to be able to find a straight up replacement. Nobody's going to be able to do what Big Ben could do in that scenario, and that's sort of where we're at with our collector. Now, that's not to say that we're not going to have some good horses that are going to show up. We do have, I'd say right now, our headliners, Grade 1 winner, the winner of the Carter Handicap, Doppelganger. He actually just worked out under the lights earlier this week here at Charlestown just to kind of get a feel for the track and get accustomed to racing under the lights, which obviously is one variable that a lot of horses will be dealing with for the first time. Skippy Longstocking, kind of looking at the PPs, even though he's doesn't have that Grade 1 win like Doppelganger, he would probably be my lean for the morning line favorite for the race right now for Saffie Joseph Jr. And so those two I'd say would be the main national headliners that we know about right now. We certainly think that some others will, now that the Art Collector news is out there, would maybe think more about our race, just knowing that hey, it could be more of a wide open event. And of course, the locals will be very, very fired up on Friday night because Muad'Dib is going to be trying to one up his second place finish to Art Collector last year. He'll be back. And he's not coming into the race in that same raging form that he was last year. But I do feel like from a fitness standpoint, I feel like he's in a better place than he was with three races under his belt this year as opposed to one last year. I think he's coming into the race in good form and has a big shot. So definitely, like I said, it's a more wide open event this year. And so certainly I think from a betting standpoint, that could be a positive.
For folks that have never had the chance to attend the races at Charlestown, this is a 9-furlong race. It's a very unique race because of the configuration of that racetrack. It's a much smaller track than what we're used to seeing at most major racetracks. So tell me a little bit about the surface and about the track and about what's going to be facing the contenders in the Charlestown Classic.
Well, credit to our track superintendent, Doug Bowling, because I just feel like, obviously, as is the case with most, I feel like, dirt surfaces, speed is definitely it is an asset. I think that especially if wanting to secure position around 3 turns, I feel like I've heard the adage that, in some route races that, you can only lose ground on 1 turn, and I feel like at Charlestown, obviously you can probably, adjust the math a little bit there that you probably don't want to lose too much ground around 3 turns. That's for sure. So, but I feel like, going back through the years, you can win from pretty much everywhere. We did have, wire to wire winners in Sleepy Eyes Todd, Art Collector, obviously last year. But then you go back to horses like Duke of Mischief and Imperative. They showed that you certainly can close from out of it. And so, I feel like certainly you want to have a horse that's athletic and can run the turns well when you have 3 of them. But I do feel like in general that it is there's with the exception of maybe 2001, where I do feel like there was a bit of a speed bias that kind of got out of control. I think that was the Sleepy Eyes Todd runner-up year to Art Collector. I feel like in general the track has been pretty fair on Classic night, and certainly we'll keep an eye on it. But I wouldn't expect to see anything too out of the ordinary, and I'd like to think that we have a pretty fair surface on a night in, night out basis here.
There was talk early in the season that the very talented 3-year-old filly, Hoosier Filly, may make a run at the boys in the Kentucky Derby. As we know, that didn't materialize, but she is expected to make a run in the Grade 3 Charlestown Oaks on the Classic undercard Friday. That's a big coup for the folks at Charlestown.
Absolutely, and I had the pleasure of getting to call her last race down at Ellis Park in the Monomoy Girl. I was filling in for my buddy Travis Stone, who had his brother was getting married that week. And so, again, that race was originally going to be at Churchill, then got moved down to Ellis. And so it was kind of once I saw her there, I mean, shocker. Obviously, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, but I was just like, this filly would just be perfect for Charlestown. Just that natural speed. She looks like she is a super athletic sort. And I feel like as long as she breaks and can get to the front, I feel like she will be a handful. I think that she very much could follow in the footsteps of a filly like Society from last year for Steve Asmussen, who basically went wire to wire in the Oaks and then parlayed that 2-turn, 7-furlong success into a Grade 1 win in the Cotillion. I feel like Hoosier Filly has a Grade 1 with her name on it eventually, and again, she's another one that we are very excited to get to see run in the Charlestown Oaks.
who might she tackle in that Oaks? Have you gotten a look at some of the other contenders expected?
So it's again another race that's still a little bit in flux. This we're a couple of days out from entries. We'll take entries on Tuesday, but I know that Opus 42 is among the horses that are pointing this way for Arnaud Delacour. Also have a couple of horses actually from California that are interested in trying to get in. It's a nice problem to have, that again, based on the preferences and, figuring out the graded stakes aspects, the graded stakes earnings versus, listed stakes earnings and that type of stuff. A Ceiling Crusher for Doug O'Neill. She has a very bright future in my opinion. She's definitely among the favorites. As my cat, this is my cat Grant, who's yelling at me now on the phone. Apologies to the dear listeners. He's like, "Why are you up right now? This is not like you." But
what is it with you guys at Charlestown and cats? By the way, I remember our good friend Eric Zimney, who was the director of racing there for a long time, and he would always come on and talk about his cat Dude. As a matter of fact, Dude has participated in some different things we've done on the network here with making picks. Are you all cat people at Charlestown?
Well, it's weird. This is going to be a very strange aside for your viewers here that I'm sure they're going to be riveted to find out. But I'm definitely a dog person. I kind of inherited Grant, my cat, and so the cat life, I didn't choose it, but the cat life chose me. So like I said, he's as close to a dog as you can get for a cat. But yeah, I said more of a dog guy, but until this guy kicks the bucket, I'm a cat guy for now. So.
Well, you don't ever have to worry about me trying to crash at your place when I come there. I'm allergic to cats, can't stand them. I'm definitely a dog guy from that aspect of it. So don't worry about me trying to crash at your place. And I'm talking with Paul Espinosa, the announcer at Charlestown Classic Night coming up on Friday. Make sure you circle that on your calendar. A couple minutes left, Paul, before we have to wrap it up and get to a break. But I want to talk about a couple of the other races on the undercard, in particular the Pink Ribbon, the Russell Road. There are some big names that could potentially show up in those races too.
Absolutely, and the Pink Ribbon this year has a chance to be maybe the best non-classic or Oaks race ever run at Charlestown, in my opinion, because we have a potential showdown between Society, last year's Oaks winner, and Frank's Rockette, who won the Pink Ribbon last year for Bill Mott. And those two, I mean, again, just absolute superstar fillies, in my opinion. Clearly, we probably got a little bit of an assist when Society stablemate Echo Zulu ran a hole in the wind up there at Saratoga, and so obviously they're probably not too keen to take her on with the stablemate, and so why not come back to a track that you obviously have had success over, a $250,000 race. That again should be absolutely phenomenal. Looking forward to that matchup, and it's just kind of crazy to think about how far the product has come here. That we're going to get potentially a Breeders' Cup Sprint winner to race, and we're just now getting to him at this point of the show. CZ Rocket is pointing to the Russell Road for trainer Peter Miller. I believe he's going to have a couple of runners on the evening, so going to have again that California contingent that it's always exciting to welcome them into the fray as well. The Robert Hilton this year actually got a $100,000 purse boost to now be a $350,000 race, and that's for the straight 3-year-old boys going 7 furlongs, and again expecting a pretty evenly matched field there. Should be some great betting opportunities to look forward to. I know we have a $100,000 guaranteed late pick 5, $100,000 guaranteed late pick 4. We're going to have a mandatory payout in the jackpot pick 6, which currently is up over about $45,000 with 2 more nights left to build that pool. So it'll probably be close to that $60,000 mark. So not one of our bigger mandatory payouts, but a little bit of extra money that's going to be in the pot to start things off, and what should be a pretty awesome sequence that we're definitely looking forward to getting rolling. A special first post time next Friday night of 5 o'clock.
Paul, I want to go back to something you brought up a short time ago before I wrap this up with you. You talked about filling in at Ellis Park and calling Hoosier Phillies' most recent start. You also called a horse by the name of Rhyme Schemes, who was trained by Norm Cassie. Rhyme Schemes ran a hole in the wind at Ellis Park that day, went on last weekend to win the Grade 2 Saratoga Special. Norm was with me on the program last week to talk about Rhyme Schemes, and as I was introducing him, I played your call from Ellis Park of that huge effort in his previous race, and I made mention of the fact that listen, you and I have worked together a very long time. You've joined me on this program. But to watch you mature as a track announcer and to see where you started and where you are today, your calls are so good. And Norm said to me, he said, as I was listening to that when you were introducing me, the first thing that popped into his head was, wow, that's a really good race call. So a nice compliment to you, my friend.
Well, thank you, Mike. That's the nicest thing you ever said to me. No, I'm just kidding.
It probably is.
But no, I do appreciate it. And, it's one of the things where I tell people that, one of the great things, one of the blessings about calling at Charlestown, obviously it's home. I grew up 15 minutes from the track. And so aside from being home, you also get a ton of repetitions. We race year round here. Every month of the year we are racing. And so, like I said, I'd like to tell people that if I wasn't getting better, then there's probably something wrong, because again, I definitely have a lot of opportunities to try to, hone in my craft. And so, like I said, definitely, I do very much appreciate it. I'm thankful to Travis Travis Stone for thinking of me to fill in. And it's always nice to kind of spice things up a little bit and, maybe get to call some horses that, look a little bit faster than the binoculars. And that was certainly the case with Rhyme Schemes, where, that was one of the first days that I was down there, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, I love our horses at Charlestown, but other than Charlestown Classic and Oaks Night, I don't see them move that fast in my binoculars, like Rhyme Schemes did. And it was like an eye-opening performance that, oh yeah, these Kentucky horses, they're pretty quick. And so I am absolutely looking forward to following Rhyme Schemes throughout the rest of his journey. He looks like a serious racehorse, and again, couldn't be happier for Norm as well. I've gotten to know him a little bit through Travis, and so very happy for he and his team.
Well, brother, keep it rolling. We'll be watching and listening on Friday. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy every minute, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
All right, Paul Espinosa here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. When I come back, I'll get you ready for hour number 2, and I'll give you an update on what people are saying with this week's poll question. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Join us for the FanDuel meet at Kentucky Downs August 31st through September 13th, showcasing 7 days of racing with $24 million in purses, including the world's richest maiden races at $150,000 for Kentucky breds. The FanDuel meet boasts the largest field sizes in America and 10 stakes worth $1 million and another worth $2 million. Visit themintkentuckydowns.com. There's unique and there's Kentucky Downs, the horseman's racetrack.
With every race, every stride and sprint, winning is everything, especially when you've dedicated everything you have to get there. But winning a Breeders' Cup Challenge Series race is just the beginning of something bigger. An invitation to one of the most anticipated events in horse racing, the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Winning a Breeders' Cup Challenge Series race turns a finish line into the start of your legacy, a starting gate into the world stage, one race into once in a lifetime. Winning earns you an automatic starting position in a Breeders' Cup race, entry fees paid by the Breeders' Cup, a nominator award of $10,000, and a travel award of up to $40,000. When it comes to cementing your legacy, winning a Breeders' Cup Challenge Series race is just the beginning. View the schedule of Challenge Series races happening around the world and learn more at breederscup.com/challenge.
Attention horsemen, the 2023 Claiming Crown is coming to the fairgrounds in New Orleans on Saturday, December 2nd. The 25th Claiming Crown features 8 races totaling $1 million in base purses, headlined by the $200,000 Claiming Crown Jewel at 1 1/8 miles. The deadline to make horses eligible for the Claiming Crown is November 18th, with entries to be taken November 25th. Eligibility request forms and more information is available at claimingcrown.com.
And now an important message from Jerry Rice.
As a career wide receiver, I've been hit hard. But no training nor practice prepared us for the devastation of COVID-19. Thankfully, there is hope. Even with multiple vaccines available, we still have to work together until everyone is safe. We all win when we unite to prevent.
For more information, visit unitetoprevent.org.
Trainer Talk, presented by Fasig-Tipton.
Please join me in welcoming Hall of Fame trainer Todd Fletcher.
Hall of Fame trainer Nick Zito on Trainer Talk. Welcome Hall of Famer Bob Baffert to the program. Hall of Fame trainer Shug McGahee, nice enough to spend some time with us. Hall of Fame trainer Bill Mott here on Trainer Talk.
Dual Hall of Fame trainer Mark Cassie.
Trainer Talk, the biggest names in horse racing. Wednesdays, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on Sirius 216, XM 204, and streaming live at horseracingradio.net. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Wet Paint launching on the far outside. They're at the top of the stretch, 3/4 in 1:12 and 2, and Sacred Wish has opened up 3, trying to fend off Wet Paint, who's closing ground, but Sacred Wish still has a 3-length lead. Wet Paint is coming to her. These two will hit the wire together. Sacred Wish, Wet Paint, Sacred Wish, Wet Paint, surging under Flavien Prat to win the Coaching Club American Oaks. Sacred Wish was second. Gambling Girl third. She's looking lucky was fourth.
Frank Miramati with the call. The Coaching Club American Oaks at the Spa. Wet Paint the victor that day. She'll try to go back-to-back with victories in the Coaching Club American Oaks and in today's Alabama. She'll be one of the favorites to pull that off. Going to be joined in the second hour of the program at 9:20 for this week's edition of Unsung Heroes, presented by Woodbine. I'll be joined by Jerry Duffy from Godolphin. Of course, Godolphin, the owners of Wet Paint and the sensational filly Pretty Mischievous. So we're going to talk to Jerry coming up in hour number 2. That hour begins with Ryan Mahan, who is the director of Auctioneers at Keeneland. He's going to remember Royal Delta as we continue to celebrate Royal Delta Week, presented by Keeneland Sales here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. We've been doing that all week long. Road to the Breeders' Cup coming your way at 9:45. Going to talk with Hall of Famer Mike Smith, who will join us live from California to look back on Royal Delta and to talk about some of the horses he's involved with right now, and there are some good ones, and that should be a great Road to the Breeders' Cup segment at the end of the second hour of the program. I asked you in our poll question today to let me know who some of your all-time favorite fillies and or mares are, and not necessarily the best, but just the ones that have spoken to you, your favorites. Laura tweets to us and says, Swiss Skydiver, Monomoy Girl, Got Stormy, Zenyatta, and Going to Vegas. Marilyn tweets to us and says, Rachel Alexandra, Blind Luck, Songbird, Ruffian, and Waya. Gomez in Blue says Ginger Punch. That's a good call right there. Ginger Punch was pretty darn good. The Maryland Thoroughbred Association said, let's see. This is great. Safely Kept, Sharing, Shine Again, Caesar's Wish, Twixt, Alma North, Gallarette, Conover, Wide Country, Brilliant Brass, Filet d'Esprit, Jamila, Gin Talking, and the mare we will honor today, All Brandy. Serena's Song getting a vote, and a few more from emails. I told you, if you don't do social media, simply email the show, and that's what John Gasper has done. You remember Johnny? Longtime participant here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. For Johnny, it's Personal Ensign. Great call. King chimes in and says, let's see, Society Selection with the Test and the Alabama victories, Susan's Girl, Urban Sea, My Flag, and Tussaud as his favorite fillies. Michael says, for me, it's Ruffian. Another story of what might have been. Yeah, tough to go past the great Ruffian. Serena's Song from Mark, who emails in, says Serena's Song, the most hickory, tough filly to hit the racetrack in generations. Just some great, there are so many more here. I'm flipping through as we're doing this. Black Caviar gets a vote from JD. Appreciate that, JD. Keep them coming. Let me know your thoughts on some of your favorite all-time fillies and mares. You can do it, Mike, at horseracingradio.net, or you can do it on our social media pages at HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook. All right, hour 2 comes your way next, right after a 10-second pause for station identification. This is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, all presented by twinSpires. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, with you on this Saturday morning, continuing to celebrate Royal Delta Week. I can say that. I've said it an awful lot this week, as have our hosts on our other programs. Royal Delta Week, all presented by Keeneland Sales. And it's been a special week looking back on the Hall of Famer, looking back on her career, and, of course, looking back on that magical day in 2011 when she sold for a whopping $8.5 million at the Keeneland November sale. I'll be joined by Ryan Mahan to look back on that particular day and to talk about Royal Delta, her career, and some of the storylines associated with her through Ryan's eyes. So we'll do that coming up momentarily. If you missed any portion of the first hour of the program, Jim Lawson was with me from Woodbine to talk about this year's King's Plate. Paul Espinosa looking ahead to the Charlestown Classic coming up on Friday. Great information from both gentlemen. If you missed those interviews or any of our shows throughout the week, catch up on our website, horseracingradio.net. You can listen to podcasts of all of our shows there, and you can listen on every podcast platform. So whether you get your podcast via Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Podbean or Google, however you access them, just type in Horse Racing Radio Network, and you can listen at your leisure. And again, follow us on social media at HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. Well, Royal Delta, her career speaks for itself. I mean, obviously a Hall of Fame career, but there were so many incredible moments, including her wins in back-to-back runnings of the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic, also known as the Distaff. She won those races in 2011 and in 2012. She won the Alabama in 2011, and we think back on her today as the Alabama is renewed at Saratoga. And then I mentioned the $8.5 million auction price at the Keeneland November sale in 2011. And that's a moment that will always stand out to Ryan Mahan, who is the director of Auctioneers at Keeneland, kind enough to spend a little time with us here this morning to remember the great mare. Ryan, appreciate the visit, my friend. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, really excited to look back on her career. And, you know, for you, I was watching a video that was put together by Keeneland, and you sat down with our good friend Kurt Becker to have a conversation about Royal Delta and that night at the sale in 2011. And for you, the story really does begin with a meeting when you met a gentleman in Florida by the name of Benjamin Leone years prior to this all taking place. So tell me the story from the beginning.
Well, actually, it was in October before we sold her in November.
Oh, okay.
And he was at the Ocala sale, and I didn't know him. He didn't have any thoroughbreds, so he called and said, "Can we have lunch tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, I'm heading home, but I'll stay for that." So we have lunch at his farm. Quite an elegant gentleman. And he said, "I would like to do a Pasofino sale here." And I said, "Well, Mr. Leone, I wouldn't be the guy for that. I don't know anything about Pasofinos." He said, "Well, that's the point." He said, "I want it to look like a Keeneland sale." I said, "Okay." So we did it. And again, I know nothing about Pasofinos. And about halfway through the sale, he comes on the auction stand and he says, Stop. This is not going well." He said, "Give them 15 minutes about Keeneland. I want these people to understand what the gold standard in thoroughbred auctions is about." Well, being an auctioneer and talking fast, filling 15 minutes was not easy. So, I'd give it, 1936 and perpetuate the very best of thoroughbred racing and sales. And we go through all of that. And then the profits of the racing and sales go to purses and global development, fan development, community, and, of course, safety of horses and riders. Well, that's about 4 minutes. And I said, "Well, how about questions?" Not one hand went up. So then Mr. Leone said, at the end of the sale, he said, that didn't go as well as I wanted it to. I want to get into thoroughbreds. How do you suggest I do that? I said, "Well, next month, of course, is the Keeneland November sale." He said, "I'll be there." So he shows up, and I'm at the barn. And, of course, she was just magical when she got off the van from the Breeders' Cup. And everybody was so excited. Mr. Leone said, "What will she bring?" And I said, "Oh, gosh, Mr. Leone, she's going to bring a lot. She's the best of the best." And he said, "What would she bring?" I said, "Gosh, she could bring," of course, no auctioneer wants to throw that out. Well, he won't stop. And I said, "She could bring $3 million or $4 million. He said, "Then I'll own her." And I said, "And she could bring more than that. Then I'll own her." And then in a kidding fashion, I said, "Well, now, Mr. Leone, she could bring 5 or 6. And with a big smile on my face. And he says, then I'll still own her. I went, oh, goodness, game on. And it was indeed.
Yeah, music to your ears as an auctioneer, correct?
Absolutely. And then I just had to stop. Like, I'm going to get myself in trouble. He keeps saying yes.
Well, that's always a good thing, especially as you're watching the bidding unfold and you're seeing the numbers continue to climb toward that $8.5 million. Ryan, what do you remember about the atmosphere in the pavilion that day?
You know, when you get big horses like that, much like Flightline, last sale, it gets really quiet and crowded, and the nerves get a little on edge, I've got to tell you. And it was that day for her. When she walked in, she just kind of owned the place. As you recall, she was very regal, and she looked around and just stood like a statue there. And it was like, this is awesome. Now, this is fun. This is what we do this for, the great ones.
Yeah, and that was before she had won her second of those two consecutive Ladies Classics.
Yes,
that was right after her first
as
one.
I recall, she'd won the Alabama, then the Churchill, the Breeders' Cup Ladies Class. Then, of course, after he bought her, she did it again.
Yeah, and at the time when she pulled it off in 2012, she was just the second horse ever to win the Ladies Classic on two different occasions. She joined Bayakoa, who pulled off the double in 1989 and 1990.
I recall that.
Yeah, she eventually got herself into some rarefied air.
Goodness, she was something now.
You said that Benjamin Leone, when he approached you, and he said that he wanted his sale to look like a Keeneland sale. So, Ryan, what does a Keeneland sale look like?
This will be my 46th year there. And, I always kind of think of it, when you're a little kid and you walk into a baseball stadium and that first time the grass is greener you've ever seen, the Dodger blue is more blue, the red is more red. I think that's what you do at Keeneland when you walk in there. And the atmosphere, because the captains of industry are looking at you and everyone else, and just the big crowd that is there. And when they come to a hush, and Kurt and I talk about it all the time, we'll look at each other and go, man, this is unbelievable. And that's the way it was with Royal Delta. It was stone quiet when she walked in.
Yeah, she was very, very special, and I'm sure that you have witnessed that same type of setting, that same type of feeling with other horses over the years, because she's certainly not the only horse to sell for multi-millions of dollars at a Keeneland sale. So when you think back on all of these years you've been doing this, Ryan, what are some of the other memories that come to mind for you?
It kind of goes both ways, Mike. I've been asked that several times. It's great selling the big horses, but I've been in this business my entire life and know a lot of people, of course, and it's a tough business. When you breed them and you foal them and you've got a lot of money involved, and to see the smaller guys walking at Keeneland. There was a guy, he just passed away, Teddy Custer. He would always bring his own horse in, tap the auction stand, look at me and say, "Baby needs a new pair of shoes. Help if you can." And it's very rewarding, to see all these horsemen gathered here in September and November, and that's what they do for a living, and a lot of them for generations. And, to sit back and think, you've got a minute and a half to pay this guy's kid's education or his farm payment. It can be daunting, but on the other hand, it's just marvelous.
It's a huge responsibility.
It is, and Kurt and I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, when I've had time to talk with Kurt about what he does when he steps up to the podium and he starts reading through the pedigree and the race record of all of these horses that step into the ring, he'll talk about his mindset and what his role is in that particular moment. So for you, on the flip side of that, from the auctioneer's perspective, Ryan, what is your role and your, I guess, your mindset and your goal every time a horse steps into that ring?
That's a great question, Mike. And a couple of years ago, I'll give you a little story. We had a horse that had a pretty good reserve on it, and we were just getting nowhere on it. And that mare had a half-sister that had run in October. This is November, and just got in all kinds of trouble. Fell out of the gate, ran over a horse. Horse ran over her. And she was like third choice, and the rider kept gathering her up, went to the inside, and nothing went right. Just one of those races. And she finished second, and it was the gamest thing. And I looked at Kurt, and we have kind of a signal when I want him to give a speech. And I said, "Kurt, we're in trouble here. Help if you can." He recalls the entire race and then looks at me and goes, "Isn't that what we're selling, class?" And it just, it went off again, had four more bids. The only bids. And I think that's kind of his role. I look at my role differently, of course. I want people to feel comfortable when they walk in there. If I'm asking a guy to give $200, $400, or $1 million in a minute and a half or less, I want them to feel comfortable. And I don't want a lot of screaming and yelling, like some auctions are that way. It's very loud and almost circus-like, where Keeneland is not. And I want people comfortable when they walk in there, that they have a fair shake and everything is right there for them.
Talking with Ryan Mahan, he is the director of Auctioneers at Keeneland, and as you heard him say, he's been doing it for a very, very long time. Ryan, I'm sure that you participated in auctions that are, not involving racehorses, but this is a passion of yours. How come? Why racehorses?
Well, my stepfather, Dr. Robert Copeland, who was a veterinarian that practiced on the racetrack and had a surgical practice, and I was with him, of course. Still am. He's 97 next week, by the way, and doing quite well.
Wow.
And so I was on the racetrack with him a lot. Assisted him in surgeries as a young guy, not as a veterinarian, certainly. And that got my passion for horses. And I always thought I'd be a veterinarian, like most young men and women in the Kentucky area. They're all going to be veterinarians when they're 18. And the first time I went to a Keeneland sale, I just thought, man, the commerce, the lights, the noise, it really intrigued me. And it was so quick and fast-paced that I kind of told my dad, I said, this looks like it might be more fun. He said, okay. So he introduced me to George Swinebrod, who at the time was the head auctioneer at Keeneland. And he said, come on, boy, let's put you to work. And I was still going to University of Kentucky at the time. I was a junior at the time. And I was making about $2 an hour doing whatever I was doing at the time. He gave me a check for $25 for working the first sale, which took an hour.
Wow.
And I thought, man, how long has this been going on?
How long did it take you to learn to talk fast like that?
Yeah, and I'm still learning. First of all, there are auction schools, a number of them around, and basically you don't learn much. But the first time you get up there, you're all kind of together. Nobody knows what they're doing, and it's almost like going to a cocktail party and say, "Talk fast, talk like an auctioneer." You just make a fool of yourself. But everybody gets to do that at once at auction school, and it only lasts 3 weeks. And you kind of learn the basics, the role, the filler words that some use. And it's usually more fast-paced than we are at horse sales. But that kind of gave me the base and the foundation to get going.
Are there any other types of auctions that might compare to the excitement and the overall levels that we see at a Keeneland sale?
Yeah, I think so. The car sales now are exciting, I suppose. It's not my kind of deal, honestly. Walt Robertson, who was an auctioneer at Keeneland for a number of years, and Fasig Tifton, he and I owned Swinebrod Denton, which is a real estate auction firm, and we sold Spendthrift and Calumet. And I'll tell you, there was some hype to those.
Yeah, I can
when
imagine.
Calumet went on the auction block, it was very exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine that those types of auctions would have the same energy. How important is creating energy at an auction, Ryan? And how do you do it?
I think it's everything. I think you can talk too much as an auctioneer. I think the horse is the centerpiece, and I think all the lights are on the horse. There's a reason the lights are on the horse like that, and that's what we try to do is make it about the horse.
Any difference between your approach to a yearling sale like we're going to see coming up September 11th to the 23rd at Keeneland, or a sale in November where it's not strictly yearlings and you have breeding stock? Is there a difference in the way you approach those?
I'm really lucky that I'm on the inspection team at Keeneland. Mm-hmm. So we look at about a third of the horses, and we have two groups, so I've seen a half of a third of all of these horses at the farm, and it's a huge advantage to me to be on Tom Hinkle's farm and talking to him about his horses that would have been mid-May. And then check back with him, of course, in the interim and say, how are they coming? They're coming great. This one is doing this. This one's getting bigger. This one didn't grow as much as we thought he would. And so that's a huge advantage that I have is that, number one, I've done it so long. And number two, I live right here, and being on the inspection team, I've seen a lot of these horses. And the ones that I haven't seen, probably in the first three books anyway, I will see them at the sale and take Kurt with me, and we'll kind of get our game plan as we go.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up next, Ryan. Every year that Kurt has been part of our broadcast team for the Breeders' Cup, and it's been many, many years now, he always talks about wanting to get back on the first flight possible to Kentucky so that he can, the very next morning after Breeders' Cup, he can be walking the sales grounds with you and talking to all the consigners and the buyers and getting a chance to look at all the young horses. There are 4,200 yearlings cataloged for this year's September sale at Keeneland. You don't get a chance to look at all of them, I'm sure, but what are some of the things that when you take that walk through the sales grounds you're hoping to accomplish in the information you're hoping to gather?
You know what we like to do? We do that before the sale, but I think probably more importantly than the barn area is the morning of the sale, because by now the consignor will have a pretty good idea of who's on their horse. They might say, Baffert's on it, so-and-so's on it, go on and on. And so we lock into those guys. Why is Baffert on it? Well, he's got a half-sister that was in the Del Mar Oaks. So we're making mental notes and putting actually on our catalog page. So I think you have to be totally aware of your horse, certainly of your buyer and your seller. Some sellers are more difficult than others because they put their reserves way up there, and their idea, of course, is I don't need the money as bad as I want the horse, maybe. So we talk about things like that a lot in the morning, and we start. The sale starts at 10. Kurt and I are there at 7 every morning, and they start lining up at about 7:15. And the information is so powerful for us. And they're, when two guys get hooked up on a horse, a big number, what makes one guy win and one guy lose? And you never really know that. It might just be this guy's in a bad mood today. Something else came up in his business. The other guy might be in a great mood. So you want to kind of make everybody comfortable first and then figure out what makes them tick.
Well, Ryan, you do a wonderful job. You've done it for many, many years. And earlier in the show, I had a chance to talk about the King's Plate with Jim Lawson, and your name came up. And he mentioned you were supposed to be there with him and his family celebrating the King's Plate this year, and that wasn't possible. So he wants to pass along his regards and let you know he's listening right now. So,
well, that's wonderful. He's been a very good friend for a long, long time, and he's got a mare at our farm, Destroy, that has now had, I think she's had 6 stakes winners.
Wow.
So she is royalty to us.
Absolutely. And Ryan Mahan is royalty when it comes to the thoroughbred auctions, no doubt about it. Ryan, really appreciate the visit here. Thanks for looking back on Royal Delta and that special $8.5 million day. We'll talk again soon, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike, always.
All right, Ryan Mahan, Director of Auctioneers at Keeneland. Really fun insights there, too, right? Taking you kind of inside what goes on behind the scenes before the horses even step into the ring. Wonderful stuff from Ryan. My thanks to him, and my thanks to Keeneland for all their support of Royal Delta Week throughout the week here on HRRN. When I come back, it is time for this week's edition of Unsung Heroes. It's one, as always, you will not want to miss. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN, horse racing's voice.
Race to twinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, twinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. twinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit twinspires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is Royal Delta Week on HRRN. Presented by Keeneland Sales.
Keeneland is proud to sponsor this afternoon's Grade 1 Alabama and celebrate the tremendous talent associated with the historic race, including Hall of Famer Royal Delta, who won the race in 2011. The last 4 winners of the Alabama are all Keeneland September graduates: Nest, Malathot, Swiss Skydiver, and Dunbar Road. The World's Yearling Sale takes place September 11th to the 23rd at Keeneland. With more than 4,200 yearlings cataloged, there's something for everyone. Keeneland graduates demonstrate that good horses come from book 1 to book 6 and at every price point. Make plans to attend the Keeneland September sale. Hey everyone, it's the Baron with this week's North of the Border Report presented by Woodbine Entertainment. 17 sophomores, including Woodbine Oaks winner Elysian Field and Plate Trial victor Paramount Prince, both trained by dual Hall of Famer Mark Cassie, will contest the $1 million King's Plate. first leg of the Canadian Triple Crown, highlighting an outstanding stakes-filled Sunday card at Woodbine. The 164th edition of the King's Plate, North America's oldest continually run race, contested at 1.25 miles on the Woodbine Tapeta, is the first event in the Tri-Surface Series for Canadian-bred 3-year-olds. Wando, bred and owned by the late Gustav Schickendance, was the last horse to complete the Triple Crown in 2003, while becoming the 7th horse to record that unique triple. Tomorrow also marks the first time since 1951 that the race will be run as the King's Plate, in keeping with the tradition of naming the race after the ruling British monarch. Other standout stakes on Sunday's card are the $200,000 Grade 2 Dance Smartly, the $125,000 Catch a Glimpse, and $125,000 Soaring Free. In the Dance Smartly, Brazilian-bred Justify My Love, trained by Paulo Lobo for her breeder, comes into the race off a sharp score in the $100,000 Indiana General Assembly Distaff on July 8th. A Grade 2 winner in Argentina, it was the first stakes triumph since the 6-year-old mare came to North America for her 2022 campaign. First post for Sunday is 12:25 p.m. Eastern, with the featured King's Plate scheduled as race 10 at 5:39 p.m. And that's your North of the Border report for this Saturday morning. For more updates and racing information, visit woodbine.com or follow along on both Twitter and Instagram at Woodbine TV.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by twinSpires.
Heroes in the world of sports are not uncommon, oftentimes thrusting themselves into the limelight through unimaginable feats.
Back behind the ball, Woods, Hudson.
And in! He has done it! Tiger is back! Tiger is back on top! Tiger Woods, the 2019 Masters champion!
And breathtaking performances.
Here's how you count to 8. 3, 2, 1. And for the 8th time, college basketball's national championship trophy is coming home to Kentucky.
But behind every great hero, there are others. Individuals who play a crucial role in the achievements of those we read about in the headlines. The ultimate team players, content to stand behind the curtain, embracing their place as a vital part of a sport's success. In horse racing, these are the unsung heroes.
Well, for many of you who have followed this sport over the years, you know that the royal blue with the white chevrons on the sleeves and the blue cap are the colors of Godolphin, and those colors have graced the winner's circle not just here in the States, but at major racetracks all over the world. And Wet Paint is looking to take them back to the winner's circle again later today in the Grade 1 Alabama at Saratoga. She is 2-1 on the morning line, owned and bred by Godolphin. And this week's Unsung Hero is Jerry Duffy, who does work at Godolphin, and he joins me now here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Jerry, appreciate the time, and congrats on being this week's Unsung Hero.
Well, good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me. And as you alluded to, it's a very exciting day for the team here at Saratoga.
A huge day for the team. Look, let's start with Wet Paint. Let's talk about her. And I said earlier in the show that the reason I wanted to have you join me for this segment is because there is so much that goes into making these horses great and making them healthy and making them ready for the races long before we get to know their names and get to know them and see them in the programs. So kind of take me back to the beginning here with Wet Paint.
Well, I suppose we have to go back to when we mated the mare, Sky Painter, and we chose Blame as the sire that she was going to be bred to that year. She's a mare that ran on the grass. She was second in the Miss Grillo, had a bit of ability, and being by Street Cry as a sire, Street Cry had a pretty good affinity with Arch and that sort of line. So it worked that way, and we thought, why wouldn't it work the other way? So we figured Blame was a horse that potentially could have gone on the grass as well as getting dirt horses. So given the mare won on the grass, we were kind of taking a hedge that we might get a grass or a dirt horse and try and give her options, and hence Blame was chosen. So obviously we bred the mare, got her in foal, We delivered a healthy filly, which is always a great joy. And she was raised at Stoner side. And so many of the team are involved in the process, from the mating to the foaling team, the night watch, to many of the crew. And so a lot of people have had their hands on this filly. And then obviously she went off into pre-training and ended up with Brad, and has turned out to be a really, really smart filly. So there's a great sense of just joy and accomplishment, and the whole team watch the race, cheer her on. So it's really a wonderful thing.
Jerry, are there certain protocols, or is there a certain philosophy that Godolphin follows with their young horses? You mentioned the team that's involved getting them ready and taking care of them long before they go on to be racehorses. Is there a philosophy there, or an approach that you guys use that just seems to work?
Well, I appreciate you saying how much goes in, and a lot does go into trying to cultivate and produce top-class horses. A lot of it is just being lucky and blessed, and have gratitude that you were there when they came along, in a way, and try not to get in their way, But one of the things that struck me, I was there at the barn this morning with Brad, and she's just a sweetheart. She hangs her head out over the webbing, and you can give her a rub on her head. And I think a lot of things, one of the things that's very important to us on the farm is, you can't teach a horse to run fast, but you can teach it to have manners, and just that rapport with people, that trust in people at every stage of their career, from handling them as young horses and teaching them to when they go to the pre-trainers and go into training. They've got to have a relationship with people, and a trusting relationship with people. So, one of our core principles is just treating them with kindness, being patient, and giving them an education, and creating, relationships with people. So it's kind of nice to see it come full circle, and to still see her have that demeanor and that sort of easygoing nature. And you see it in her races, the draw doesn't matter. She kind of jumps out and sits off the pace, and she comes running at the end. So she's a very relaxed, very easygoing filly, which I think really helps her in her job,
Is there a balance that needs to be maintained with, look, you don't want them to be your pet, right? They are there to win races. And I would imagine, like any athlete, and these are equine athletes, they have to have a tenacity about them and a will to win. So is it possible to go too far one direction and make them almost too docile and friendly where they don't want to compete?
Oh no, you're correct. They're not pets. They're athletes. They're race horses, but it doesn't stop us getting attached to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the great horses are going to be great regardless. But I think there's been a lot of horses that had a huge amount of talent and a huge amount of ability, but their minds got in the way, or they got distracted. So. You get around enough good ones and talk to enough trainers who've had great horses. The good ones eat, sleep, and train. They're professional. They know their job. They're smart. They don't waste energy on things that are not important. They don't wash out or fret in the paddock. They take everything in stride. So I think the really good ones have that. But I think you can help a cohort in the middle to sort of, help them get closer to that sort of a demeanor, But definitely when it comes down to putting their heads down and running for you, there's got to be a bit of fight there, and there's got to be that will to win.
Let's stick with wet paint for a minute here. You mentioned that when you put this mating together, going to blame, you said, okay, we'll give this filly some options. And she may want to go on the turf. She may want to go on the dirt, whatever the case may be. She debuts on the turf at Kentucky Downs in September of 2022. She ends up finishing 10th of 12 that day. The next step is to put her on the dirt, and you do that on a sloppy track at Indiana Grand, and she ends up winning off the screen, winning by 2 3/4 lengths, so she wins pretty easily that day. Was that the moment you said, okay, we figured this one out, she wants to be on the dirt?
Oh, definitely, yeah. and sometimes you got to experiment around, and sometimes they need a couple of runs. It's interesting. She went back on the synthetic and obviously was beaten second that day at Turfway, and then got back on the dirt and strung 3 in a row. and there was, a wet track and a sloppy track, and the Fantasy Stakes at Oaklawn was a dry track, and she answered that question, which we were happy to see because we wondered maybe she wants it sloppy, but she answered the question that day. Obviously went on and ran a very credible race in the Oaks. We were fortunate that day to have Pretty Mischievous, who was the best on the day, but always felt this filly was kind of going to want to stretch out a little bit, and I think the mile and an eighth really suited her in the Coaching Club Oaks, and we're at a mile and a quarter today, which should really play to her strengths. There should be a bit of speed in the race. It's a good field, and she's a filly that always comes running at the end, so hopefully she'll do that today for us.
Talking with Jerry Duffy, he is this week's Unsung Hero, representing Godolphin and the team and the wonderful work that they do. And I want to spend a minute or two talking about some of the other programs that Dolphin has created. But before I do that, Jerry, you mentioned Pretty Mischievous. And later in the show, I have a segment with Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin at 10:30 Eastern called I Ask, They Answer. And I'm going to ask them who they feel is the best 3-year-old filly in the country right now, sitting here today. And you got to be feeling pretty good because Wet Paint and Pretty Mischievous are probably going to be the first two names out of most people's mouth when I ask them that question.
Well, I hope so. Of course, we're very biased, and so we're definitely feeling like we've got two of the top 3-year-old fillies in the country right now. And again, it's a very fortunate spot to be in, and I appreciate the segment is the Unsung Hero, but it should be Unsung Heroes because I'm a very small part in a big machine, and it's a big team effort, and again it's just a lot of gratitude and feeling very fortunate to be around two really top fillies right now, so it's great.
What comes to mind when I say the name Cody's Wish?
Oh, just the goosebumps the hair stand up on the back of your neck. It's just the most incredible story. And, you talk about perspective, getting to know the Dorman family, their lives, the challenges Cody Dorman has been up against, and just to see what a relationship between a boy and a horse can do. And not just what that relationship has done for Cody and the Dorman family, but I think anybody that's been around the story or knows the story, a lot of perspective, a lot of gratitude that, you go through life and sometimes we sweat the small stuff, and you talk about perspective and you just look at what some people overcome on a daily basis, and it just warms your heart to see Cody's Wish, the horse, do so much for Cody the boy, and for the two of them as a team, I think doing so much for the world right now and bringing such positivity, and the guys were telling me that, we ran him last weekend and he ran a very credible third. It didn't pan out, but it's, we're going to shorten him up again, but they just rolled on, and we're so happy to be there and so happy that Cody tried, and it's on to the next one. And they're just amazing people, and they've done so much for all of us as a team. And it's a fairy tale,
Sheikh Mohammed, who is the owner of Godolphin, ruler of Dubai, has given so much to this sport, and a lot of the things he does behind the scenes, I don't necessarily look at him as your traditional unsung hero because he does find his name in the headlines, and that's not really what this segment is about. But the things that he does behind the scenes, I don't know if they often make the headlines that they should. And one of those things is creating the Flying Start program, of which you are a graduate, and then the Thoroughbred Industry Employee Awards that I've had the chance to be part of in the past. Just wonderful programs, and he really does a lot to help the sport, and people don't hear about a lot of those things, do they?
There's no doubt, and I think, I can't speak for His Highness Sheikh Mohammed himself, but, I think a lot of the things are done because they're the right thing to do. It's not done for fame or notoriety. There's a genuine desire to make the industry and the world a better place. And I certainly feel, very fortunate to have come through the Flying Start program. I graduated in 2007. We were the third intake, so back in the early days of the program. But for me, it was a life changer. I can never repay the debt. It exposed me to a global industry, opened opportunities that I couldn't have imagined as a young fella. And there's 200 plus graduates of the program now that feel the same way. And I think we're all delighted to see that many of those graduates are employers or, industry leaders and really have a perspective that they try and impact and influence, the industry in a positive direction as often as they can. So it's been an incredible program. Again, the Thoroughbred Industry Employee Awards, the finalists have been announced and that'll be upcoming, I believe, in October. But again, just a great way to recognize the backbone of this industry, which are the men and women that are on the racetrack, working for the trainers, on the farms. And, a lot of these folks devote their lives to the horses, to the industry. And this is the first time there's been a platform to really recognize their efforts, their sacrifices. And it's if you've ever been, it's the most amazing award ceremony. There's plenty of stories that would just, you'd have to be a stone not to tear up listening to some of these people's stories. So for them to get their dues and their just reward is really important. So yep. I think all of us at Godolphin are just so glad that we can be a part of that and make it happen.
That's exactly why we created this particular segment on the show, Unsung Heroes, to recognize people that do that tremendous work behind the scenes, make our sport a success, and without them, we wouldn't have a sport. So that's what this segment's all about every week. That's what the Thoroughbred Industry Employee Awards are all about with Godolphin. And Jerry Duffy, you and the team do tremendous work. Keep it rolling, my friend. All the best moving forward, and really appreciate the time this morning.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jerry Duffy, this week's Unsung Hero, and that segment presented every week by Woodbine Entertainment. I'm back right after this word from Woodbine.
The thrill of world-class racing is just beginning at Toronto's Woodbine Racetrack. Kick off the weekend's action now with racing each Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, beginning at 1:05 p.m. Eastern, with Thursday twilight racing being added on May 25th. With more than $64 million in purses this season, you'll enjoy world-class racing and training facilities with the top turf racing in North America over the prestigious E.P. Taylor Turf Course. You won't want to miss racing at Woodbine. For wagering updates, handicapping tips, racing news, and more, visit Woodbine.com.
Still to come, I'll go down the road to the Breeders' Cup with Hall of Fame jockey Mike Smith, and I'll take a look at a historical date in racing history or two as they apply to this weekend. This is the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires on HRRN.
Race the twinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, twinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. twinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit twinspires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
There are plenty of thrills at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet, with live racing Friday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy the Summit of Speed, the Florida Sire Stakes Series, and a whole lot more. Watch the action from our Trackside Carousel Club, our Feast in 10 Palms restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, reservations, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Virginia's horse racing and breeding industry is built on the talents, skills, labors, and passions of incredible people working in all parts of the Commonwealth. It supports 5,300 jobs that help create an economic impact of $542 million annually. Wager Virginia's showcase event this summer, the 9-week Colonial Downs Thoroughbred Race Meet, which runs through September 9th. It pays to breed or raise your horse in Virginia.
Get ready for the biggest night of racing in Charlestown history on Friday, August 25th. It's the Grade 2 $1 million Charlestown Classic and the Grade 3 $750,000 Charlestown Oaks, now the richest sprint race for 3-year-old fillies in North America. The spectacular card features 9 stakes races worth $2.9 million. The action gets started with a special first post time of 5 o'clock Eastern. It's the Grade 2 Charlestown Classic and Grade 3 Charlestown Oaks on Friday, August 25th here at Hollywood Casino and Charlestown Races.
Undefeated Grade 1 winner Mastery was a multiple graded stakes winner at 2, including victory in the Grade 1 Los Alamitos Cash Call Futurity. On the track, his recent top runners include these star performers.
Surprisingly down the outside, Scottish Star here, surprisingly surging on the outside, surprisingly.
It's Midnight Memories who takes the lead. Midnight Memories, much the best in the Zenyatta.
Mastery, standing at Claiborne Farm.
Ellis Park is offering average daily purses of nearly $600,000 and a record $14 million in purses. Kentucky breds will compete for $70,000 in maiden special weight races and up to $80,000 in allowance races. And bettors will love the low 15% takeout pick 5s and the 20-cent jackpot pick 6, along with a daily $3 all-turf pick 3. For more information, visit EllisParkRacing.com. Ellis Park Pursers are powered by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. First post, 12:45 p.m. Eastern.
This is Royal Delta Week on HRRN. Presented by Keeneland Sales.
You know, she's owned by somebody different now. Mr. Leone purchased her out of the Keeneland sale last year, and of course we want Royal Delta to do as well for him as she'd done for her previous owner, and she's a barn favorite, and there probably is as much or more pressure that goes along with her for many obvious reasons, I guess, just because she was crowned a champion last year, and we'd love to see her, you know, put in a repeat performance. I think we've seen over the course of the year this year where she's put in 3 or 4 really, really good races, and you know, any of those 3 or 4 races is going to make her tough to beat on Friday. You know, we just want to get her over there safely and give her a chance to run.
That's Hall of Fame trainer Bill Mott talking about Royal Delta right before she won her second consecutive Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic back in 2012. She was ridden that day by Hall of Fame jockey Mike Smith, who joins us now live from California as we continue to celebrate Royal Delta Week here on HRRN, all presented by Keeneland Sales. Mike, appreciate the visit, my friend. Thanks so much for the time.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
When you listen to Bill Mott talk about Royal Delta in that previous clip, and you think back on Royal Delta's career, what are some of the things that immediately come to mind?
Oh, just how great she was, and regal. She was probably one of the best looking fillies you'd ever seen. If you ever look at her, she'd be the top model, man. She was just absolutely gorgeous. And along with that, she was extremely talented, man. It was crazy when she felt like she was running downhill when she ran her A race, man. I mean, it was like there was no catching her.
You don't sell for $8.5 million at a public auction without having that it factor. And you talk about how good she looked. Ryan Mahan, who is the director of Auctioneers at Keeneland, said that she was a really tough mare. Like, she was almost like a colt. Did you experience that same thing with her?
You know, when that might have been, you know, handling it from the ground. You know, when you were up on top of her, man, she was a professional. She knew what she was out there for, and she was very straightforward when you were on top of her. She was much better. I think the safest place, the best place, was on top of her.
That's typically the case, isn't it?
Yeah, for a lot of them, you know, on the ground they can be a bit feisty, but boy, you get up on top and they know it's time for business, and then the true professionals, they act accordingly.
You didn't ride her in her first win in the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic, but you certainly did in the second one in 2012, and she beat My Miss Aurelia, Include Me Out, Grace Hall that day. I think Awesome Feather was in that field, but she ended up winning that race wire to wire. What do you remember about the race?
Well, I don't think they were expecting us to go to the lead to start with, but I knew she had some speed. Her problem early on was she would get away every now and then, just a little awkward. She was, you know, big filly, so it usually took her a jump or two. I knew that if she did jump well, being where we drew, and the way I thought the track was playing, and the way I thought, boy, if she just so happened to get away well, I'm going to certainly use it to our advantage. If they want to go to, to lead, that's fine. But I'm going to make whoever wants to go use themselves, because once you got this mare into that big, beautiful stride of her, she was going to run, regardless if she was on the lead or sitting second, third, or fourth. She would run her race, and man, lo and behold, we caught probably one of her best breaks ever. She left there running that day, and I said, you know what? Let's just let her run in this first turn. and everyone wasn't expecting it, I believe, and they let me have it. And it was pretty much over after that.
Well, it's always nice when things unfold that way, and it was special in the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic in 2012 for Mike and for Royal Delta and Bill Mott and all the connections involved with the eventual Hall of Fame mare. Mike, she won some big races. She won the Fleur-de-Lis. She won the Delaware Handicap, the Beldame. We mentioned the Ladies Classic. She won the Personal Ensign, the Delaware Handicap again in 2013. Do you have a favorite Royal Delta moment outside of that win in the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic?
You know, the Fleur-de-Lis and I think it was the Personal Ensign. I don't know if you go back and look at that. I mean, she just was on her A-plus game, man, and she just literally destroyed the field without ever having to get out of second gear, if that, man. It was just, she was just, when she was 100%, man, she would run races like that I think she could have been beating the boys that day. Those are two races that really stand out. Of course, I mean, they're all special, man. I mean, you're blessed to pull them all off. You know, even in any of them that you could name that she was blessed to have won. We're all special, but there were a few times where man, she was really on, and I just don't think anybody in the country could have beat her.
Mike, I've been dying to ask you this question since you were able to confirm that you could make it onto the show this morning. I know you're busy working horses this morning, and I really appreciate the time. But our poll question I've thrown out to listeners, and people are chiming in from all over the country. Who are some of your all-time favorite fillies and mares? And you think about Mike Smith's career and the great fillies and mares you've had the chance to be aboard. So when you're asked that question, what are some of the names that immediately come to mind?
Wow, well, I've been so blessed to have ridden some amazing fillies, and during their time, they won another filly, sometimes horse in the country that could have beat them. It's just the list would go on, just starting from way back. I mean, even Jersey, you've seen before Jersey Girl, actually Jostle, Jersey Girl, Inside Information, Sky Beauty, Road Heavenly Prize. Man, I'm trying to think of some of the other great ones, man. The list goes on and on and on, and then you get out to California and you run into first horse I run into when I got out here was a Zeri. Look at Ophelia, what she went on to do. She was just amazing. And then after you think, well, I'll never find another one like that, and then here you come up with, you have Zenyatta comes up, and who probably arguably would go down as one of the greatest of all time, maybe in the top three for sure. Anyway, I would say anyway. And then when you don't think you have another one, here comes a Songbird, man, and and before her, Unique Bella. I mean, the list just goes. It's crazy, man. I've been so blessed to have ridden. I mean, I'm leaving some out.
Midnight Bisou. Midnight Bisou was pretty good.
Man, look at her, man. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, it's just I've been blessed to have ridden so many great fillies, man. It's just why that is, I don't know, but for some reason it just seems to work with me in fillies. And not that I ain't ridden some amazing colts as well, but one filly just would come after the other, and they weren't just, they went on win streaks that were crazy. I mean, it's hard enough to win 2 in a row. I mean, a lot of these fillies went on to win, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 19 in a row. I mean, so I've been very, very blessed, to have ridden some amazing fillies, and Abel Tasman, and then the drawing a blank on how to pronounce it, the Princess of Sylmar winning, the Oaks, for Todd on a filly that was a long shot, and look at the filly she beat that day. I mean, the Great Beholder, and the list goes on. I mean, I even got to ride Beholder one time. So I've been very blessed with fillies, man. I couldn't. They're all champions. I got more filly champions than anything, I think.
It's probably the case. Yeah, I'm sure you do. Talking with Hall of Fame jockey Mike Smith, going down the road to the Breeders' Cup for you on this Saturday morning. Mike, I know I've asked you before about the things that are still motivating you and driving you at this point in your career. And I think I've even asked you, how much longer is Mike Smith going to keep doing this? Will we see this legendary career continue? But I need to compliment you on your television debut, my friend. That was pretty cool to start watching you as an analyst on TV. The insight that you bring to the table, and I would say this about every Hall of Fame rider that steps into the broadcast booth, is invaluable because you've done it. You've played the game at the highest level, and congrats on that, my friend. Well done.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. It was kind of some deep waters to get your feet wet to start out with, but
it was.
We got them wet, nonetheless, and I enjoyed it, and it's something that I would certainly want to pursue when my career is over. And as far as what keeps me motivated is the horse. I mean, I truly love horses, and I love being on them, watching them develop, still able to compete at a top level as far as my skills and my body are still holding up. It seems to me, I feel like they are. I'm in great shape. If I do anything right, like I've always said early on, is just take care of your body, man, and it'll take care of you. And right now, it's still holding me up. My legs feel great. I'm still training. I'm still doing my 5 miles a day, personal trainer for an hour, and heck, sometimes might even run at night too. So it just, as long as I can stay healthy and I feel like I'm not getting in the way, then I'm going to keep doing it. People say, when are you going to retire? I am retired. I get the opportunity to ride these great horses, and and it's just amazing. It's just why would you give it up?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Mike Smith. Mike, keep doing what you're doing, buddy. We love watching you out there and love seeing you on TV. And I'll tell you this, you always have a home. If you ever want to do radio, you got a home right here on HRRN, too. We'd be happy to have you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Like that old joke goes, I certainly have the face for radio.
yeah, you and me both. The new Mike and Mike, right? Yeah.
But no, anyway, man, I appreciate it, and I hope I didn't leave any of my great fillies out, man. I've been so blessed to have ridden so many great ones, man, and they all really truly mean something to me. They really do. I can go back at times and look at my trophy cabinet and see some of them, and man, all the memories just pop back into your head. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's an awesome career. Mike, appreciate it, brother. I got to get to a break. Safe trip every time you get a leg up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. God bless.
All right, pal. You too. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Join us for the FanDuel meet at Kentucky Downs August 31st through September 13th. Showcasing 7 days of racing with $24 million in purses, including the world's richest maiden races at $150,000 for Kentucky breds. The FanDuel meet boasts the largest field sizes in America and 10 stakes worth $1 million and another worth $2 million. Visit themintkentuckydowns.com. There's Unique and there's Kentucky Downs, the horseman's racetrack.
Woodford Feed, where tradition merges with technology. Family owned since 1940 and providing exceptional customer service, Woodford Feed specializes in the highest quality feed, using only the finest ingredients to ensure optimal nutrition for your horses. In addition, Woodford Feed can help with all your farm needs, including field seed, fertilizer, and weed control. So whether your horse is sprinting around the racetrack or has a foal by her side, count on Woodford Feed to provide the quality nutrition necessary to perform at the highest level. Woodford Feed, Versailles, Kentucky.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Did you receive a call or message that mentioned Social Security and demanded immediate action? Did the caller know your Social Security number or other personal information and tell you that your Social Security number had been used in connection with the crime? Did you feel worried that your Social Security number might be suspended, your bank account might be frozen or seized, or you could be arrested? That is not the Social Security Administration. Social Security will not threaten you, demand your personal information, or instant payment. Email or text you pictures or documents, or use a real government official's name to gain your trust. Social Security does not accept payments by gift card, prepaid debit card, internet currency, or by mailing cash. Criminals use these forms of payment because they are hard to trace. Do not be fooled. Hang up. Ignore them. Report this criminal activity to the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General at oig.ssa.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Want to get the latest HRRN content directly on your computer or mobile device? Then subscribe to our podcast using the Podbean app or Apple Podcasts. Just go to hrrn.podbean.com on your computer and click follow, or download the Podbean app and search HRRN. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and listen to our latest episodes anytime. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our podcasts today. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by twinSpires.
Well, a special thank you to everyone who has taken time to share their thoughts and their stories about their favorite fillies and mares of all time. Don't have time to get to all of them because we have to get to hour number 3, but I do want to mention this one, a perfect way to wrap up Royal Delta Week here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Sally Ellen, our friend Sally Ellen Hurst, who you've heard on the program up at Country Life Farm in Maryland, sent a couple of pictures of the canine version of Royal Delta, a Jack Russell that she bred and is now named Royal Delta. Really cool stuff. Thanks for that, Sally Ellen, and thanks to everybody who took time to weigh in on that question today. Keep them coming. We're with you right up until 11 a.m. Eastern. When I come back, hour 3 begins with the TwinSpires Triple Play. Joe Kristufek will be here. Kurt Becker, Stroll Through Racing History at 10:20, and at 10:30, Dale, Tim, I Ask, They Answer. If your local station is leaving us at this time, continue listening to the third hour of the show on Sirius 216 XM 204 and streaming worldwide at horseracingradio.net. Hour 3 of the Equine Forum is coming up next, right after I pause. 10 seconds. For station identification, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
From the rail to your radio, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Mike Smith just shakes the reins at Songbird. Going for broke has made progress up into second inside a family tree, but they're 6 lengths behind Songbird at the 16th pole. It is Songbird, this magnificent filly, winning the Alabama. She is a perfect 10.
It is Wando by 6 into the lane. Mobile to the inside. Rock again on the outside. Final furlong. It is all Wando. Sharp, strong, and a dominating winner of the Queen's Plate. Wando. Simply spectacular.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires.
1 furlong to go. Art Collector tears off the turn, moves away by 4. Wadi back in second, officiating in Mind Control, 16th to go. And it's another masterpiece for Art Collector. He goes back-to-back in the Charlestown Classic.
In the center, it's Tricky, stretching her every yard of the way. Royal Delta's getting involved late as well. From pretty along the inside. It's Tricky racing between them and Royal Delta. It's a thriller. Royal Delta's going to score. Royal Delta strikes the front. And Royal Delta, perfectly handled, has taken the Ladies' Classic. She's won a division for the year, too.
Now, here's Mike Penna.
Welcome back. Hour 3 of the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires. Rolling on toward the finish line. 1 more hour to go. If you missed any portion of the first 2 hours of the program, head back to the website, horseracingradio.net. You can listen to the podcast whenever you have some time, and not just this show, but all of our shows available for you to listen to at your leisure, and you can do that too on every major podcast platform. So however you get your podcasts, type in Horse Racing Radio Network and listen whenever you have some time. Well, the first 2 hours were loaded with content, and a lot of that talking about the Alabama, and a lot of that looking back on the career and celebrating the career of Royal Delta, the Hall of Famer. So brilliant. We've been doing that throughout the entire week. This is Royal Delta Week, all presented by our friends at Keeneland Sales. Of course, Royal Delta, an $8.5 million sale purchase at the 2011 Keeneland November sale. So it all ties together beautifully. Continue to do that as I move throughout the third hour of the program, which begins momentarily with Joe Kristufek and this week's twinSpires Triple Play. 3 races you'll keep an eye on this afternoon. Kurt Becker takes you on his weekly Stroll Through Racing History at 10:20, and at 10:30, Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin will be here for I Ask, They Answer. Plenty of conversation there about some of the top race mares in the history of the sport. So a lot of things to come. But we kick it off, as we do every week, with the twinSpires Triple Play. All right, Joe Kristufek, here we go. 3 races our listeners will want to bet, and they'll want to bet at twinspires.com this afternoon. And you've selected 3 races, all from Ellis Park. Love it.
Yeah, Michael, the last time I was on with you, I swung 3 56-foot curveballs and missed wildly. So I've got some making up to do, and I think I've got 3 winners for you here. And don't forget about the 10 times the bonus points at Ellis Park for all the races, all the wagers, with the exception of show today, as a token of twinSpires appreciation to our loyal customers. Again, 10 times the rewards points. So do take advantage of that, and hopefully you can take advantage of these plays. And we're going to start in race number 1. 2-1 on the morning line, but I think might be a free space in the early pick 5, Lamasco, who destroyed a similar field last out at Ellis. Second race off the bench. Was third in the comeback race, but lost to a tough winner in Condiment Girl and was hung wide. Galloped out nicely, was well set up for the subsequent start. And, man, she just killed that field by more than 8 lengths, and I don't see any reason why she won't do exactly the same thing in this one for Fausto Gutierrez. Christian Torres reunited with Lamasco, who looks like a little bit of a standout to me in the opener.
Is she the main speed in this race?
There's a couple of other horses that have some early speed. I don't think she has to be on the lead. If they give it to her, then she'll gladly take it. I think there's an opportunity for her to go gate to wire, but sometimes in some of these cheaper races, some other horses feel like their best chance is to try to hustle for the lead, and if that happens, she can sit that perfect spying, tracking type trip, versatile enough to do that, and I thought her last race was maybe the best of her entire career. I think the horse you got to look at to maybe round out the gimmicks is Coexist, who I really liked when she won on May the 12th at Churchill, and then she threw in her huge clunker. Took her a little bit of time to get back to her best form, but she did so last out. She won going away, and I thought she looked a little bit more impressive than even that margin of victory indicates. She's 6-1, so if I were to use 2 horses in the opener, I'd use Lamasco and Coexist, but those are my exact horses in the opener on Saturday.
I was going to ask you about that strategy, because a lot of people, Joe, will look at this first race and say, well, it's only 6 horses. And, yeah, the favorite that you're giving out 2-1 on the morning line, you probably can't make any money, but you can if you do it the way you just described and you hook up her in an exacta with number 4 Coexist at 6-1. That could be a pretty decent exacta. Is that the only way you can really approach some of these shorter fields when you like a horse that's not a big price?
Yeah, I mean, to single in the first leg of a wager probably isn't as advantageous as doing it maybe later in a pick 4, pick 5 type scenario, but anytime you can have a single, it's to your benefit. If I was playing multiple tickets, I might play, 1 ticket using Lamasco and Coexist, and maybe 1 or 2 other tickets, depending on if it's a pick 3, pick 4, pick 5, singling Lamasco and try to attack it that way.
Okay, so race number 1 at Ellis Park. Joe's top pick is number 3 Lamasco, and looking at an exacta with number 4 Coexist in that first leg of the twinSpires Triple Play. Post time, by the way, at Ellis, 12:45 Eastern. That's 11:45 Central and 9:45 for all of you tuned in to this segment on the West Coast. All right, race number 2 is the second race you have selected, and much like race number 1, this is a race that presents some opportunity to do a couple of creative things. So tell me about race number 2.
Yeah, and, it's nice when you got horses that you like in a sequence, such as this early pick 5. I think all 3 of my plays are in the early pick 5. You can lean on these horses. You can maybe hit these wagers multiple times, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that, particularly when you've got a 6-1 morning line shot like American Mayhem, who looked like he needed his race last out on July 21st. And the way he ran, I think he did. That was a deep and talented field of turf sprinters back on July 21st. He broke a little bit slowly, was 3 wide throughout, 5 wide on the turn, and stayed on nicely to be third behind an ultra-sharp winner in Tilted Towers. I think he moves forward from this race. As you can see, he's had 2 solid work since, 5 furlongs and a quick half-mile variety for a good trainer in Jimmy DeVito. And in a race where you can go several different directions, I don't know if we'll get 6-1. I think 7-2, 4-1 would be fair on American Mayhem. But again, a horse I think you can lean on the Saturday card.
Is this just a straight play on your part, maybe a win bet or win place? I don't know what you think of those type of wagers, or do you try to hook them up with some other horses?
A lot of it is price dependent, Mike, as far as like win place type wagers go. You know, if I'm getting 7-2, 4-1 on this horse, or maybe even a better price than that because the morning line suggests that maybe I will. I've got no problem with like the win double place, 10 to win, 20 to place, 10 to 1, 30 to place. I know that's a conservative way to play, but when you got a horse that you like as much as I like this one, it's certainly not anything against just taking a little bit out of the coffers. But I really like to, lean on these horses in multi-race wagers like I mentioned earlier. And if I were to play some gimmicks, I also like another 6-1 shot in Shimmer Me Timbers, who was second best last out at Horseshoe Indianapolis. And sometimes these turf sprinters or any horses coming in from Horseshoe Indianapolis, you get an extra click up in the odds because people aren't as familiar with them. This horse, chased and got fried by Nobles 2 races ago in a really good stake at the Horseshoe Indianapolis. And again, in the allowance ranks here where he fits really well with tactical speed, might get that pocket trip. So another horse that I will utilize in the multi-race wagers and in the vertical and horizontal wagers, along with my top pick, American Mayhem, will be Shimmer Me Timbers.
Love it. Joe Kristufek with me here on the TwinSpires Triple Play. In race number 2, the second leg that he has selected here for you today, he'll go with number 3, American Mayhem, at odds of 6-1 as his top pick. Race number 4 is your final leg. Tell me more about the 4th race at Ellis Park today.
Yeah, Camp Daddy, again, part of that early pick 5 sequence. This horse, the number 4 in race number 4, and he won a 20,000 non-2 last out, but did it like a good horse. I mean, he was in a good spot early, ranged up on the turn 4 wide, switch leads absolutely perfectly, was much the best, and was taken in hand in the final furlong, and he still almost won by 6. Claim for 20,000. Brittany Vandenberg raises him up to 30 off the claim, which makes a lot of sense. She's got huge numbers off the claim, and Camp Daddy, appears to be headed in the right direction. Really love the way he ran last time out, and see no reason why he can't do it again against better competition.
I'm going to yield to your handicapping prowess here, Joe, because I've always heard that the philosophy and the theory that if a trainer claims a horse and then runs them back in their next start, runs them for a higher price, which you would expect that they would probably try to do, but that's always a positive sign. You don't want to see it go the other way where they claim a horse and then throw him in for less than what they claimed him for, correct?
Well, especially in 2023 where the claiming game has completely changed, especially here in Kentucky where the purses are so good that you can claim a horse for 30, run him back in 5 weeks for 20, and the purse more than dictates that that's the right move. So if you're going to claim a horse and raise them up in class because you don't want to lose them, and obviously run for a little bit more purse money at the same time, that's a doubly positive sign than when you and I were coming up in the game, Mike. And, if you claimed a horse, you were doing so creatively because you expected to jump them up in class. That isn't necessarily the way things are these days.
Yeah, it's a different game than it used to be, but Joe Kristufek is on top of it, just like all the folks who join us for this TwinSpires Triple Play every single week. So, Joe, let's recap before I let you go. Your 3 selections this week. The first race at Ellis Park, you'll go with number 3, Lamasco, 2-1 on the morning line. Race number 2 at Ellis, number 3, American Mayhem at 6-1. And in the 4th race, number 4, Camp Daddy at odds of 7-2. And I know you mentioned a couple of other horses that our listeners can throw in there for exotics, whether they're playing exactas or maybe they want to key those 2 horses in the first and second positions and play some horses for third in a trifecta. Who knows? There's a lot of ways to make money, but we'll encourage people to make sure they're betting those races at twinspires.com.
Yeah, Mike, I think I've had a pretty good run since I've been on with you for the triple plays for the most part. And one thing I can guarantee you with the picks for this week, they will not be as bad as the last time I was on the airwaves with you. Because like I said, I whiffed 3 times, and it wasn't pretty. So looking forward to making amends today and hope everyone enjoys their Saturday of racing.
Man, even the great ones strike out once in a while.
Even Tony Gwynn would go on 0 for 10 slumps, maybe a couple times a year. But, looking forward to it. And don't forget, take advantage of the offer at TwinSpires for Ellis Park. 10 times the rewards points. That's no joke. And it's on every wager you make at Ellis Park, sans the show wagers. So take advantage of that. Make sure you opt in at twinSpires, token of our appreciation to all the players out there.
Joe, appreciate it, my friend. All the best. Good luck at the windows later today, and keep it rolling.
All right, thanks, Mike. Same to you, buddy.
All right, Joe Kristufek with the twinSpires Triple Play. Again, however you want to bet those races, there is no specific twinSpires Triple Play bet when you go to twinspires.com. You're not going to see that, but you can play each of those races and those horses any way you choose to do so, and just do it at twinspires.com. Kurt Becker's Stroll Through Racing History is coming up next, and every week he brings you a really interesting behind-the-scenes look into some of the stars in our sport. And sometimes they're not the horses that you're overly familiar with. There have been some incredible fillies to win the Alabama over the years. Some of the greatest fillies in the history of the sport have won the Alabama. Well, his subject of today's piece coming up next is a filly by the name of White Star Line, who won the Alabama in 1978 for Hall of Fame trainer Woody Stevens. Michael Benezia was the jockey that day, and it's a wonderful story. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned for that. And then coming up at 10:30 Eastern, Dale, Tim, I ask, they answer. Plenty to talk about there as well. I'll have several topics they can debate. A couple of those, by the way, submitted by listeners from around the country, and you can do that every single week by emailing the show, mike@horseracingradio.net, and I will ask your questions to Dale and Tim in the weeks ahead. Stay with me. Kurt Becker's Stroll Through Racing History is next on the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires on HRRN, Horse Racing's voice.
Race the twinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, twinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. twinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit twinspires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Get ready for the biggest night of racing in Charlestown history on Friday, August 25th. It's the Grade 2 $1 million Charlestown Classic and the Grade 3 $750,000 Charlestown Oaks, now the richest sprint race for 3-year-old fillies in North America. The spectacular card features 9 stakes races worth $2.9 million. The action gets started with a special first post time of 5 o'clock Eastern. It's the Grade 2 Charlestown Classic and Grade 3 Charlestown Oaks on Friday, August 25th here at Hollywood Casino and Charlestown Races.
Airdrie Stud is proud to announce the arrival of Grade 1 winning millionaire Happy Saver for the 2023 season. Happy Saver boasts one of the most important female families of the century, as his third dam is Broodmare of the Year Weekend Surprise, dam of the legendary AP Indy. Undefeated in his first 5 starts, Happy Saver capped off his perfect 4-for-4 season with an emphatic victory in the historic Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.
And Happy Saver stays undefeated. He steps up and he wins the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.
Airdrie Studs, Happy Saver. Think about it.
Colonial Downs summer racing season is here. Weekend racing returns every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with a first post of 1:30 p.m. Back this year is our popular 12% takeout Pick 5, which is now offered twice daily. We're also introducing the all-new Old Dominion 6, a $1 traditional Pick 6 with a 15% takeout. Join us for our biggest days of the season on August 12th for the Colonial Downs Festival of Racing, which features the Grade 1 Arlington Million, and September 9th as we wrap up the season with the Virginia Derby. Colonial Downs, rich history, bright future.
It's time now to shine the spotlight on the Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week.
A 60-1 balloons bombs away winner Baytown Chatterbox goes back-to-back as he takes the Ellis Park Juvenile in 125-1. The son of Street Sense and Tyler Hurd.
Baytown Chatterbox, the son of Darley Stallion Street Sense, rolled to that 2.5-length win in the Ellis Park Juvenile last weekend. A winning effort, which makes him your Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week. Darley Stallion Street Sense. With sales time rolling around, it's good to know that Street Sense's juveniles include Ellis Park Juvenile winner Baytown Chatterbox, Grade 2 Saratoga Special runner-up Market Street, and the $500,000 Keeneland September yearling turned winning Saratoga debutante Ms. Sense. Just imagine. Learn more about Street Sense and all the Darley Stallions by visiting DarleyAmerica.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by twinSpires.
Hello, I'm Kurt Becker. Thanks for joining me as I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. Later today, the New York Racing Association will present the Grade 1 Alabama Stakes for 3-year-old fillies at Saratoga Racecourse with Keeneland as the presenting sponsor. And for this week's stroll, we remember the filly who won the Alabama some 45 years ago this month. Her name was White Star Line. Foaled on April 4th, 1975 at Newstead Farm in Upperville, Virginia, White Star Line was a bay filly by dual classic winner Northern Dancer out of Fast Line by Mr. Busher. The filly's sire had already risen to a position of global prominence, while her dam was a great-granddaughter of Man o' War. Named for a British shipping line known for owning some of the world's most memorable transatlantic ocean liners of the late 19th to early 20th century, White Star Line was a homebred which raced for the Newstead Farm, managed at the time by Mark Harden. It was Harden's father, Taylor, who had founded the farm and devoted 40 years of his life to seeing the farm rise to prominence. But Taylor Harden had passed away when White Star Line was a yearling. Mark Harden decided to carry forward the family breeding farm, relocating from Charlottesville to the 720-acre farm in Upperville, Virginia, to oversee the family's racing and breeding interests. He decided to retain White Star Line with an eye toward the future and the farm's broodmare band, and he sent the filly to Hall of Famer Woody Stevens for training. White Star Line, however, would not race as a 2-year-old. It was reported that she had suffered a possible injury to her back, perhaps in the form of a pulled muscle, and it would later be said that Stevens offered something which the filly needed in abundance. He offered her patience. Stevens gave the filly all the time she needed, foregoing any racing as a juvenile to give White Star Line a chance to develop at a moderate pace while training in Florida. But in February of 1978, Stevens decided it was time to send his pupil to the races. Racing the filly with the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory known as phenylbutazone, more commonly known as Bute, Stevens sent White Star Line to the post for her career debut on February 23, 1978 at Hialeah. Rallying from off the pace, she won under jockey Eddie Maple by a nose. 2 weeks later, she backed it up with a victory in Allowance Company at Gulfstream Park by 3 lengths. In her third start, White Star Line won at 7 furlongs by a nose, upping her record to 3 for 3, all 3 starts coming in Florida. Stevens then decided it was time to put the filly to the test. He chose to ship her to New York, where Bute was a banned substance, and she responded in spectacular fashion, winning at Aqueduct by 4 lengths as the odds-on favorite. Becoming known as an exciting stretch runner, White Star Line headed next to Kentucky and Churchill Downs for her stakes debut. It was legal to race with Bute in Kentucky, but Stevens ruled against it. And so, without the benefit of the anti-inflammatory, White Star Line entered Stakes Company for the first time in the La Troyenne. Sent to the post at odds of 2 to 5, she responded with her 5th win in as many starts. 1 week later, White Star Line went to the post as the 5-2 second choice in the 104th running of the Kentucky Oaks, and she kept her unbeaten string intact, winning the race with Maple aboard and giving Stevens his 4th Oaks victory. It was said that White Star Line had gone to Kentucky as a filly of promise, but that she left as one of the leaders of her division. In fact, talk of an Eclipse Award was beginning to circulate. But then came Belmont Park and the New York filly Triple Crown. Running in the Acorn, the Mother Goose, and the Coaching Club American Oaks, White Star Line could do no better than a 3rd-place finish. After having won 6 in a row to begin her career, she had now lost 3 straight. Stevens decided that the only thing wrong with White Star Line was that she did not care for Belmont Park, and to a large extent, the filly proved incorrect, shipping to Saratoga in the summer of 1978 to win a division of the Test Stakes before returning to capture the 98th running of the Alabama. In fact, the Alabama would give her the 2nd Grade 1 score of her career, and 2 weeks later she would add the Grade 1 Delaware Oaks. But White Star Line would go winless in her final 6 starts of the year, and the chance to win an Eclipse Award would slip away in the process. Despite being a triple Grade 1 winner, including the Kentucky Oaks and the Alabama, her lack of success at Belmont Park and 3 straight losses at Aqueduct to end the year would be too much to overcome. White Star Line met with moderate success as a broodmare, becoming the dam or grand dam of any number of mid-level stakes winners in both Europe and North America. Stevens once said of her, she's hard to figure, except she just didn't like Belmont Park. But she liked Churchill Downs, and she loved Saratoga. And it was at the Spa some 45 years ago this month that White Star Line won the tradition-rich Alabama Stakes. Please join me again next week when I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. For HRRN, I'm Kurt Becker.
And once again, my thanks to Kurt and to Keeneland for making those segments possible each and every week. If you have missed any of Kurt's Stroll Through Racing History segments, all you have to do is head back over to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can check out the special podcast page dedicated to those stories and listen to every single one. There have been some amazing ones. Go back and listen at horseracingradio.net. When I come back, Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin, they will be here. It is this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. This is the Equine Forum, presented by twinSpires on HRRN.
Race the twinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, twinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. twinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit twinspires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
There are plenty of thrills at Gulfstream Park during the Royal Palm Meet with live racing Friday through Sunday and simulcast opportunities 7 days a week. Come out and enjoy the Summit of Speed, the Florida Sire Stakes Series, and a whole lot more. Watch the action from our Trackside Carousel Club, our Feast in 10 Palms restaurant with an elevated view of the track. For stake schedules, reservations, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Adina Stallions set the gold standard, all number one in their category. Point of entry, the number one stallion by black type and greatest stakes winners standing in Canada.
Oh, the classy point of entry would not be denied.
Shaman Ghost, the number one second crop sire standing in Canada.
It's Shaman Ghost, an overwhelming force in the last 16th of a mile.
Signature Red, the number one stallion by percentage of black type winners standing in Canada.
Signature Red won his second Highlander in a row.
And Silent Name, the number one stallion by percentage of black type performers standing in Canada. A list that includes Grade 1 winner Silent Poet.
Silent Poet in front, Admiralty Pier out the ground, but Silent Poet has won the Highlander Stakes.
And don't forget Adina's new sire, American Guru. His first crop are now yearlings of 2023. American Guru, the son of Unbridled Song, whose family have already set their gold standards around the world.
Join us for the FanDuel meet at Kentucky Downs August 31st through September 13th, showcasing 7 days of racing with $24 million in purses, including the world's richest maiden races at $150,000 for Kentucky breds. The FanDuel meet boasts the largest field sizes in America and 10 stakes worth $1 million and another worth $2 million. Visit themintkentuckydowns.com. There's Unique and there's Kentucky Downs, the horseman's racetrack.
You're listening to Royal Delta Week on HRRN, presented by Keeneland Sales.
Keeneland is proud to sponsor this afternoon's Grade 1 Alabama and celebrate the tremendous talent associated with the historic race, including Hall of Famer Royal Delta, who won the race in 2011. The last four winners of the Alabama are all Keeneland September graduates: Nest, Malathot, Swiss Skydiver, and Dunbar Road. The World's Yearling Sale takes place September 11th to the 23rd at Keeneland. With more than 4,200 yearlings cataloged, there's something for everyone. Keeneland graduates demonstrate that good horses come from book 1 to book 6 and at every price point. Make plans to attend the Keeneland September sale.
This is I Ask, They Answer on the Equine Forum on HRRN.
And the field turns for home in the Alabama. On the outside, it's tricky. And Plum Pretty digs down. They're going at each other with Royal Delta coming to them. Less than a furlong to go. And Royal Delta takes the lead and pulls away. And Royal Delta goes on to win the Alabama convincingly, beating It's Tricky by 5.5 lengths. Long Shot, Pinch Pie finished third. Then Plum Pretty, St. John Street, Inglorious, never fired today.
Royal Delta scored one of her many Grade 1 wins in the 2011 running of the Alabama. Tom Durkin had the call that you just heard. Today we look back on some of the greatest fillies and mares of all time. Plus, who should be considered the top 3-year-old filly in training right now? And would it be right or wrong to think that Hall of Fame trainer Nick Zito's dry streak is about to come to an end? All of those topics and much, much more are straight ahead on this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf writer Tim Wilkin, and all presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program in the College of Business. It all starts just 30 seconds from right now.
Learn the business of horses in the world's only accredited equine business program, the University of Louisville Equine Business Program. The University of Louisville has a legacy of excellence educating and developing industry leaders for over 35 years. Classes are taught by industry experts in state-of-the-art facilities located in the heartland of America's equine industry. The University of Louisville Equine Business Program. When it comes to horses, we mean business. For more information, visit business.louisville.edu/equine.
Well, guys, I know how much you really enjoy getting questions and topics submitted from our listeners, and that is the case again today. We have two topics or two questions that come your way from listeners around the country, and we'll remind our listeners one more time that if you do have a question or a topic you would like to ask Dale and Tim, or you would like to have them debate on this show, email that question to me, mike@horseracingradio.net, and I promise we'll get that worked in for you in the weeks ahead. Well, topic number one, guys, comes from Will in Las Vegas, and this one is for Dale. Dale, Will wants to know, how often do you or other trainers look for a particular surface footing, firm, soft, good, wet, fast, whatever it might be, and if you do scratch a horse due to not getting the conditions you're looking for, how difficult is it to find another race for that runner, and do you often have to settle for a higher condition race?
Well, for me, I don't ever scratch on surface. And it's funny because Europeans are really all about how firm the ground is, especially turf racing. And they'll scratch in a heartbeat. If they got horses love firm ground, love wet ground, I don't think here in the U.S. we worry that much about it, especially me. I'll just run. If I got one in, I'll let it run. Because the problem is it's really hard sometimes to find a good race again. That's a very good question submitted, but with me, I let them run. We'll see what they can do. And, I mean, off the turf is a little different. When it comes completely off the turf, if you have a true, pure turf horse, you want to scratch. But as far as the soft ground or sloppy racetrack for a dirt horse, I let them run, and I think it's a lot more observed in Europe than it is here.
You know, last week on this show, Dale, I was joined by Sean Clancy, and Sean and I were talking about some of the different issues that racing is facing, and he brought up the fact that, you know, sometimes in the condition book when horses are entered, there are so many races that are available to be used, and horses can enter repeatedly and not get into a race, and that can be frustrating. So if you were to scratch, and you said you don't do it often, but if you were, is that another reason that maybe you don't do it as much, or we don't see it as much here in the States, because it can be so hard to get into another race?
You know, it's a good system, but that's a good reason, probably is. But here's how the system works. When a meet starts, everyone has a 0 date. If you run in 7 days, then you have date number 7. So the person who has not run and still has 0 will get in the next race ahead of you. And it just keeps going and going and going. So if you scratch from a race, though, if you are in a race and you scratch, you don't go back to 0. You retain the date you have of entry, and it has to go back and start all over again. So it makes it very difficult to get a horse in at times. But these are only in the races that are really overfilled, like maidens on the turf and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Tim, you know, Will had the question for you last week when he asked you for a Taba update after he heard you draft him in the Showdown 2. You have an update for Will this week, too.
Yeah, Will, Taba's back on the work tab. I don't know what that means.
I'm actually going to talk to Bob probably today, Saturday, and I don't think he's anywhere near a race. Maybe it'll end up being a bad pick for me, but as of right now, I'm more than happy to keep him as my also eligible, and hopefully he gets back to the races before the year is out.
Well, you guys are both going to...
Definitely a bad pick, and name dropping to say you're talking to Bob on today.
So if I would have picked Giant Game, I could drop your name.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do that because you're a Bob man.
Well,
let me just tell you this:
all I know is I won the thing last year, and I'm still not worried now. I know our rookie friend is.
You should be worried. You should be worried.
Everybody knows I won. Everybody knows I won, just like Trump won Georgia. Everybody knows it.
Well, the thing is, Dale, you're crying like a schoolgirl because you know you got beat, and you won't accept
That's not what
defeat.
happened. Is Trump crying because he lost Georgia? No. Me and him both know. Everybody knows we both won.
Well, all I know is that Michael Riley, the newcomer, our listener who won the contest and is competing against the two of you, his Aqueduct All-Stars are running away with it at the moment. He popped out to a 27-5 lead over Dale. Timmy has 0. He got 0 points from the first go-round. We're going to see how this plays out between now and the Breeders' Cup. But so far, Michael off to a great start, and he has a huge cushion on the two of you. So I think you should both be a little worried.
No, listen, I'm self-anointed commissioner here, and I lost one of my horses this week, so I'm calling for a redraw.
Who did you lose?
My horse. Didn't I have him on my list?
No.
Art Collector? No, that was on your.
Art
You had him on your
Collector.
first
I didn't
list.
have Art Collector?
Nope.
Oh, that's it. I thought I had him. I should keep better track of my
See,
horse.
man, you're talking about me. You don't even know who's on your team.
I really don't, but I think I'll do good anyway.
Well,
This
if you
is
want to
awesome.
see, if folks want to see your team, Dale, and they want to see Tim's team, and they want to see Michael's all-star team right now, they can head to the website, horseracingradio.net. The teams, the scoring, everything is listed there, and we keep it updated as things progress with this contest that runs through
I need to
the
see my
Breeders' Cup.
teams, what needs to be done. But it sounds like I'm going to be buying dinner at Jeff Ruby's for Mike.
Hey, Mike, can I ask you a question? Did Dale pick American Pharoah on his team this time around?
Relax, boss.
I don't see
Listen,
Keen
when we go
Ice.
to Jeff Ruby's, Tim, you're going to Burger King.
Well, I'll be going there with the winner's share of the pot.
Yeah, no Keen Ice on Dale's team either right now, but good stuff. Michael, congrats on that fast start. We'll see if you can keep it going, and at some point we're going to have to bring Michael back on the show as we get further into this contest, and we'll see if he's still in the position of the one to catch at that point. But let's move on to topic number 2, which is also submitted by a listener. This one comes from Sam via email, who would like you guys to explain why multiple entries from the same trainer list separately in a race rather than a single entry. So, for example, he points out that Chad Brown enters 3 horses in the same race, requiring Sam to bet all 3 in doubles, pick threes, etc. if he likes them, costing him more money for his ticket, and he wants to know what are the rules with this situation and why or how does it benefit the players, owners, and trainers. Timmy, you want it first?
I'm looking at the Lake Placid for today. Today's Lake Placid at Saratoga. There's 8 horses entered to run on the grass. Now, 4 of them come from Chad Brown's barn. 2 of them come from Todd Pletcher's barn. Now, if they were all coupled, if my math is right, there'd be 4 betting interests in the race, and nobody wants that. And I don't know if you have a couple. Let's say Chad's horses are all coupled, and the price is good. The price goes way down, and the price you want, the horse you wanted, like for example, let's say you want tax implications in the Lake Placid. Tax implications right now on the morning line is 5-1. You know, if they're coupled all together, do you get 5-1 on that price? Maybe not. So I think it's a good idea that they don't have these coupled entries. They don't have them in the major stakes races. I think over 50,000 a stakes race. They don't have the coupled entries, and I don't think owners want that either, because the price on their horse can go down. So I think it's a good rule not to couple them, because I think it makes the betting pools bigger, and I think the bettors only can win in the end with this, because then it makes for better racing.
Oh, yeah. The bigger the field size, the better the pair of mutuals are, and that's what players want. So even though you might have to bet more to win, when you do win, you're going to get paid off a lot more. The big number is between 7 and 8. The gamblers hate number 7, it seems like. When it gets up to 8 exponentially, the handle goes way up. And it starts to diminish a little bit from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and becomes really negative after 12. But they want to give the bettors what they want, which are big mutuals. And so the more options to bet on, the better.
All right. Will, Sam, appreciate those questions. If you have a topic or a question, I'll remind you again, and you want Dale and Tim to debate that or answer your question, simply email it to me, mike@horseracingradio.net, and I will make sure to get that worked in for you in the weeks ahead. Guys, it's that time of the show where we get a chance to say hello to our good friend, Hall of Famer Nick Zito, and find out if the following statement is right or wrong.
Yeah, right or wrong. Am I right? What do you think? Right or wrong?
I only went with one topic in this segment this week because it involves the Hall of Famer Nick Zito, who has teamed up with new business partner Robert DiPippo to create a new company, which they're calling ZD Horse Racing and Management. Zito is going to be responsible for selecting and purchasing horses for their clients, then training them if he so chooses. Nick has won just 4 races over the past 3 years, but guys, I say this new approach is going to have Nick standing in the winner's circle of a greatest stakes at some point next year. Is that right or wrong?
What do you think? Right or wrong?
Timmy, am I right?
Well, I am a huge Nick Zito fan, and I talked to Nick about this venture. I think he's going to end up in the winner's circle in the graded stake, but I don't know if it'll be next year. I mean, it might be too quick to come back. But this is something that I think will rejuvenate Nick's career, because there's going to be, right now they've got some major financial backing in Dave Portnoy from Barstool and businessman Adam Weissman from Syracuse. And if they get more and more people getting the ball rolling and putting money into this, and Nick is able to pick these horses, he's going to get better stock, and he's going to be in the winner's circle. I think, I'm not going to say it's next year, but I think for sure the year after.
Yeah, I'm going to say he's in the winner's circle of a graded stakes at some point next year. Dale, am I right or wrong?
I think you're right. Nick called me a couple of days ago. He's one of my good friends. He said him and I are going to be doing business together going forward. And let me tell you, what people don't realize about Nick, he's a true horseman. All the success he had on the racetrack. The last few years have been tough on him. It's hard for guys that have trained the elite level horses to figure out how to win with inexpensive horses or bad horses. And that's what he's been stuck with. He is an elite horseman. He's also one of the best at buying horses there ever was. And I think him and I will be doing some business together going forward, and I look forward to it. He's one of the best horsemen of all time.
Yep, I was really excited when I read this news of this new company, because I think it's the perfect scenario for Nick Zito. He gets to select the horses that he would like to train, and if he doesn't want to train them, that's fine. He can give them to another trainer to do so, but I think Nick is going to pick out the cream of the crop, and look, Nick Zito hasn't forgotten how to train a racehorse, right? He's in the Hall of Fame for a reason.
Absolutely not. I mean, he might have forgot how to train a bad racehorse, but give him a grade 1 caliber horse, he'll get everything out of him you can get.
Yep, I would agree. Good luck to Nick Zito, our good friend, on that new venture. All right, topic number 4. We have 2 more to get to before we jump into our West Point of the week. 3-year-old fillies are back in the spotlight this afternoon with the 143rd running of the Grade 1 Alabama. Guys, we spend a lot of time on this show talking about the wide open nature of other divisions. So how about this one, the 3-year-old filly division? Timmy, who is the top 3-year-old filly in the land right now?
Well, we're running the Alabama today, and if Wet Paint is able to win the Alabama, and she'd also have the Coaching Club American Oaks, 2 grade 1s, she really does close the gap on Pretty Mischievous, who I think, and is also a Godolphin, but they're both Godolphin horses, who I think right now is still holding on to the top spot by virtue of her wins in the Kentucky Oaks and the Acorn. I mean, she also technically has the Grade 1 test, even though she didn't win it per se, because she was the one that crossed the finish line after Maple Leaf Mel tragically fell and was forced to be euthanized. But it still goes down as a Grade 1 on Pretty Mischievous's record. So that's 4 wins and 5 starts for her. I think that if Wet Paint wins today in the Alabama, those 2 horses are neck and neck. But if somebody else wins the Alabama, then Pretty Mischievous, I think, widens her lead. So I think it all depends on Wet Paint today, what happens. Because right now, Wet Paint and Pretty Mischievous are neck and neck, I think, for the top spot in that division.
Everything Tim said, I was getting ready to say. So I will agree with him wholeheartedly. Interesting division and some good horses in there. But if Wet Paint wins, she's the leader of the crop.
Interesting take. We'll see how that plays out this afternoon in that Grade 1 Alabama, presented, by the way, by our friends at Keeneland Sales. All right, one more topic, and this one's kind of fun, guys. I thought we'd spend some time talking about your all-time favorite fillies or mares and why you find those fillies and mares to be so special. This has been Royal Delta Week, presented by Keeneland, all week long here on the network, and we've been looking back on the Hall of Famer. But for you guys, and Dale, I'll come to you first, who are some of your all-time favorite fillies, your all-time favorite mares that when you think back on the sport, you say, wow, they were, for whatever reason, they were really special to me?
Well, of course, you got to go back to Winning Colors, win the Kentucky Derby. And what a great filly she was. Santa Anita Handicap, or Santa Anita Derby, Kentucky Derby. What a great filly she was. But, I mean, Rachel Alexander, that win that she had in the Oaks and come back and beat the boys in the Preakness. There's just too many of them out there to talk about. But if I wanted to talk about one, I'm a huge fan of Winning Colors. You know, she went out there and whipped the boys early and continued to do it as she went on in her life.
Yeah, she was special. Timmy, how about you?
Mike, we could have a full show on this topic because there's just so darn many of them. I was a huge Rachel fan, but you know, the other one that was being compared to Rachel was Zenyatta. I mean, won 19 of 20 starts. Her only loss was in the Breeders' Cup Classic in 2010, and ironically, she was named Horse of the Year that year. The year before, she won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and she wasn't Horse of the Year because Rachel won it. There's just so many. I mean, Beholder, a 2-time Eclipse champion, Bayakoa, the same. Havre de Grace, who beat the boys, who didn't really get as much the limelight because she came on the heels of Rachel Alexandra. So Lady Secret from Wayne Lucas is another. I mean, you could just go down the list, and there's so much. There are way
too many to talk about in a half-hour program.
I'm just trying to give everybody some due here, Dale.
I know you're right. I'm agreeing with you, Tim. There's just too many of them we could talk about right now that were so good. Billy Badgett's mare. All of them are just so good.
I'll give you guys. I'll give you one that you're not going to come up with off the top of your head. And I said this earlier in the program. My all-time favorite filly is a filly named Excellent Meeting. Do you remember her?
I do.
Yep. She was owned by Golden Eagle Farm, trained by your man Bob Baffert, Timmy, and she ran in the Kentucky Derby it was the year Charismatic won, and she was 5th. They took her on to the Preakness. She was never the same after that. She didn't finish that race, and she never was the same. But before the Kentucky Derby, she was as good as they get. And for whatever reason, I just fell in love with Excellent Meeting, and I loved everything about her. I thought she was going to win the Derby that year. People will forget she was actually the favorite in that year's Kentucky Derby.
And there's one other one we didn't mention, who might be the best of them all. It's Ruffian.
Very good. But what about Land of Loose?
There you go. I mean, we could go back and forth all day and still have plenty of them that we haven't named. Monomoy Girl is another one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Bayacoa and mentioned that name, Timmy, the two-time distaff winner. There was another Argentinian bred that I loved back in the early 90s. Remember Paseana?
I do. Was that McAnally,
both of them
maybe?
great mares.
Yep, that was
But
McAnally.
what about Go for One, Billy's mare? That was running against Bayacoa when the tragedy happened. I mean, she won 5 Grade 1s that year.
Yep. She's buried right here at Saratoga.
Yep, so many.
Yes, she is.
special.
What a great mare she was.
Yep. There's just so many of them. It's a great topic, Mike. We could be talking all day about it.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe one of these
we should
days.
revisit this.
We'll do a show looking back on the top fillies and mares of all time, kind of sharing our thoughts and memories and stories. And we can actually do that for other divisions too. Maybe we'll have to put that in the works at some point here up the road. I think that would be a really fun show, and maybe even get some listeners involved and get some emails coming in as to who they liked and why they liked them. This could go on for a long time. This is our poll question on the show today, by the way, and people are chiming in with their favorite fillies and mares, which is wonderful to see. It's a great way to remember them on this particular week where we celebrate Royal Delta Week on the network, and we look ahead to the Grade 1 Alabama this afternoon. All right, guys, time to wrap up the show as we do every week with our West Point of the Week, which is presented by our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds. And I tell you every week that if you're looking to experience the lifestyle of thoroughbred racehorse ownership, and let's face it, that's what it is, and you want to do it with the gold standard in racing partnerships for over 30 years, you have to do it with West Point Thoroughbreds. You text HORSE to 66866, and you can learn all about ownership from the greatest, one of the greatest ever do it, certainly, West Point Thoroughbreds. That's HORSE to 66866, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Message and data rates may apply. Tim, why don't you kick it off for us this week? What is your West Point of the week?
You know, I want to just give a shout out to Art Collector. Tragically passed away earlier this week of laminitis. It came on quickly, and you know it was just devastating to the barn of Billy Mott. There were so many over there that loved that horse, especially Irma Scott, who's been with Bill's barn for forever. I mean, she was his number one. She was his number one fan, and that barn is really reeling a little bit because of that. Because that horse, won the Pegasus World Cup this year in Florida and was on track to go to the Charlestown Classic, a race he won the last 2 years, and then he was going to head to the breeding shed. It's just a very sad story.
Yes, it is. But I want to go into a more personal story. I'm tired of being a Debbie Downer at my West Point of the Week. But there's a guy in Miami, Steve Dwoskin, that trains horses. But Steve trains horses for a hobby. He's a very wealthy man. But more important than that, he's a great philanthropist. And the Midge group, the only Midge, whatever you call them, are donating part of their purse, if they ever win, whenever they win, to Steve's charity for children cancer research. Now, personally, Steve probably saved my life when I was really sick, and he sent me to University of Miami Hospital, where he had spent a lot of money, and they took good care of me. So I'd like anybody who's involved to go online, pull up Midge and the contributions to Steve Dwoskin Children's Cancer Research. And believe me, all the money's going to the right thing, and you'll do a good thing if you help Steve try to cure cancer. And that's all I got to say about it.
So important. And it's been a very difficult week for the sport of thoroughbred racing, losing some of the prominent owners in our game. Dale, you were at the funeral services for Frank Jones Jr., your wonderful friend of your family for many, many years. Alex Campbell, Jerry Moss this past week. It's been a tough week. We've lost some good ones, guys.
It really has, and we can keep people around. Let's just let's all put money in research, and believe me, Steve is a great man. He's done a lot of good, and let's help his campaign.
All right. There you go. If you have a topic you want to hear Dale and Tim debate, email that topic to us, Mike@horseracingradio.net, and we will get it worked in. Guys, appreciate it. Great thoughts to wrap up the show. We'll do it all over again next week.
All right, fellas. Thanks.
All right, I Ask, They Answer, presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program and the College of Business. I'm back with more. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, Matthew.
There's a reason why Tony's Steaks and Seafood is my favorite restaurant. It's because I want to feel part of the family. Isn't that right, Tony?
That's right. There's a saying on the wall that I truly believe in. There's always room for one more at our table. We just want you to be part of our family.
And believe me, you will be. It's Tony's Steaks and Seafood right across from Triangle Park. Visit them at TonySteaksandSeafood.com.
I'm William Shatner, and I've been around a long time, but I'm truly humbled when I see the real battles our brave, paralyzed veterans have faced defending our freedom.
I was on a routine patrol, and we were in the desert of Kuwait, and the vehicle flipped and landed on top of me, which left me paralyzed from the waist down.
Okay, folks, this is heroism. That's why I'm proud to support Paralyzed Veterans of America. Go to PVA.org to learn how you can make a difference.
Ellis Park is offering average daily purses of nearly $600,000 and a record $14 million in purses. Kentucky breds will compete for $70,000 in maiden special weight races and up to $80,000 in allowance races. And bettors will love the low 15% takeout pick 5s and the 20-cent jackpot pick 6, along with a daily $3 all-turf pick 3. For more information, visit EllisParkRacing.com. Ellis Park Pursers are powered by the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. First post, 12:45 p.m. Eastern.
My battle buddies and I attended the NHL Stadium Series at Yankee Stadium. We had never been there before, and two of us had never seen a hockey game. Man, we had the time of our lives. It was great therapy. VetTix, we can't thank you enough.
Every empty seat at a concert, a game, motorsports, or a play is a missed opportunity to say thanks to a veteran and service member. We can help. We can give our veterans a special event where they too can create their own cherished memories. Find out how by visiting www.vettix.org. That's www.vettix.org. Find out how you can make a difference in a veteran's life.
Thursday evenings, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, is the Brisnet.com call-in show. It's your chance to call in and let the Horse Racing Radio Nation know what's on your mind. Call us at 888-966-HRRN. That's 888-966-4776. And discuss the topics you choose in the world of thoroughbred racing. The Brisnet.com call-in show on Sirius 216, XM 204, and streaming live at horseracingradio.net. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by twinSpires.
Well, remember that Blood Horse Daily has the latest racing, breeding, sales, and industry news, plus analysis, entries, race results, and replay videos, and much, much more, all at your fingertips, and you can do it every single day with the Blood Horse Daily app. It's for your phone, and it is updated throughout the day. Go to bloodhorse.com/daily to download the app or sign up. It's a great offer from the folks at Blood Horse. I tell you all the time that my home screen on my computer is bloodhorse.com. Great information there every time I get a chance to turn on the computer and take a look, which, by the way, is every single day as we get ready for big races week in and week out for you here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. And I hope you've enjoyed the past few hours. And that conversation with Dale and Tim, I think a really good idea coming out of it, talking about the greatest fillies and mares, or not even the greatest necessarily, but your favorite fillies and mares of all time. And everybody's going to have their favorites for whatever reason. I told you about Excellent Meeting and that story with that particular filly, who is my all-time favorite. She is not a Zeri. She is not Bayacoa. She's not Paseana necessarily. She's not Spain, right? All of those champions and great mares that we've seen over the years. She's not Zenyatta. But for me, she holds a very special place, and she was just a horse that I gravitated toward. And that's kind of a cool conversation. She's not Royal Delta. And by the way, our thanks to Keeneland and Keeneland Sales for all their support this week. I hope you've enjoyed Royal Delta Week. If you followed along on our social media pages or you've gotten a chance to tune into the various programs throughout the week and hear some of the features and interviews that we've done looking back on the life and the career of Royal Delta, it's been a really cool week here on the network, and we're going to continue to do more of those as we make our way down the road to the Breeders' Cup coming up in early November. Well, my thanks to all of the guests who have made this show possible here this morning. We've covered a lot of ground, talking about the return of the King's Plate. First time in a long time it's been known as the King's Plate. It's the Canadian version of the Kentucky Derby. That comes up tomorrow. You heard from Jim Lawson, the CEO of Woodbine, earlier in the program. Got a chance to talk about the Charlestown Classic coming up on Friday, and, of course, the devastating, gut-wrenching news of art collector having to be euthanized this past week, dying from the laminitis, and that is it's a blow to every single racing fan, especially those of you who are looking forward to his attempt at a three-peat in the Charlestown Classic on Friday. That's tough, but Paul Espinosa got a chance to fill us in on the expected field coming up on Friday night in West Virginia. Don't forget, if you missed any portion of this program, all you have to do is head back to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can check out the podcast whenever you have some time. You can do that on every podcast platform as well, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, whatever the case might be. I do like that idea of looking back on some of your favorite or your greatest horses in each division. Maybe I'll do that with Dale and Tim coming up on a special I Ask the Answer. And yes, I do think next year is the year we see Nick Zito return to the winner's circle in the greatest stakes race, winning 4 races over the past 3 years. That's not Nick Zito. We'll see him back next year, I promise you that. That's my prediction. My thanks to my producer, Lee Delapina, in our Lexington studio, to all of you for tuning in and weighing in on the poll question, and to Chauncey for handling our social media here this morning. I'm Mike Penna. We'll talk to you next week here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Go Steelers.